Hello and welcome to Harry FLAX, your home for amazing stories. Today's story is what if Fleur Delacour's Veela Allure failed on Harry and ancient magic declared him her destined Veela mate instead. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already. We post new stories regularly. Let's get started. Chapter 1, The Failed Allure. Fleur Delacour straightened her powder blue uniform one final time before following Madame Maxime into the great hall. The ceiling sparkled with stars tonight, reflecting her own barely contained excitement. The goblet of fire would choose the champions, and she'd spent the last 24 hours imagining her name erupting from those blue-white flames. "Stand tall, girls," Madame Maxime reminded them in rapid French. "Remember you represent beaux batons." The Hogwarts students stared as they entered. Fleur was used to this reaction, the slack jaws, the wide eyes, the sudden silence followed by whispers. Her quarter Veela heritage made this inevitable, and tonight she didn't mind. Let them look. Soon they'd see her as more than just a pretty face. She scanned the Gryffindor table automatically, noticing the red-haired boy who'd spilled pumpkin juice when she'd asked for the bouillabaisse yesterday. His reaction had been typical, stuttering, blushing, practically drooling. But his dark-haired friend. Fleur frowned. The boy with messy hair and glasses had just handed over the dish. No staring, no stammering, just a polite smile before returning to his conversation. It was unusual enough that she'd remembered it. "That's Harry Potter," Gabrielle had whispered after they'd returned to their carriage. "The boy who lived." Fleur had shrugged. The British wizard's fame didn't interest her. But his immunity to her allure? That was curious. Now they sat at the Ravenclaw table. Dumbledore dimmed the lights with a wave of his hand, and the goblet's flames cast eerie blue shadows across eager faces. "The champion for Durmstrang," Dumbledore announced as a piece of parchment shot into the air, "is Victor Crumb." Applause thundered as the surly Quidditch star slouched toward a side chamber. Fleur held her breath. "The champion for beaux batons," Dumbledore called, catching another fluttering parchment, "is Fleur Delacour." She leapt to her feet, euphoria flooding her veins. She'd done it. Her classmates' applause seemed distant as she glided between tables, head high, heart pounding. This was her moment. As she passed the Gryffindor table, she felt a peculiar tug, like magic recognizing magic. She glanced sideways. The Potter boy was clapping politely, but something flickered between them, a brief shimmer in the air, gone so quickly she wondered if she'd imagined it. Inside the side chamber, she paced impatiently, barely registering Crumb's brooding presence. When the Hogwarts champion, Cedric Diggory, joined them, she offered perfunctory congratulations. Then the door burst open again. Ludo Bagman entered, practically dragging a fourth student. "Extraordinary," Bagman was saying. "Absolutely extraordinary. Gentlemen, lady," he added, nodding to Fleur, "may I introduce the fourth Triwizard champion?" Fleur saw messy black hair and startled green eyes. Harry Potter looked as confused as she felt. "But evidently there has been a mistake," she said immediately. "E cannot compete. E is too young." "Well, it is amazing," said Bagman, rubbing his chin. "But the age restriction was only imposed this year, and his name came out of the goblet. I don't think there's any backing out now." Chaos erupted. Madame Maxime accused Dumbledore of cheating. Karkaroff threatened to withdraw. Through it all, Fleur watched Potter. He looked genuinely shocked, not triumphant. When Moody suggested someone had entered Potter's name hoping he'd be killed, the boy paled but didn't flinch. "I didn't put my name in," Potter said quietly when Dumbledore questioned him. "I don't want eternal glory. I just want a normal year for once." Something in his voice, resignation mixed with determination, made Fleur pause. Maybe there was more to this boy than she'd assumed. As the arguments continued, she felt that strange magical tug again, stronger this time. When she looked at Potter, the sensation intensified. Their eyes met across the room, and for a heartbeat, blue flames seemed to dance between them. Potter's eyes widened. He felt it too. Harry barely slept that night. Between Ron's jealous accusations and the bizarre magical moment with the Beauxbatons champion, his mind wouldn't quiet. When he finally dozed off, he dreamed of blue flames and silver eyes. He woke to Hermione shaking his shoulder. "Get up, Harry. We need to talk before everyone's awake." 10 minutes later, they sat by the lake, steam rising from a jar of portable blue flames Hermione had conjured. "Ron's being ridiculous," she said firmly. "I believe you didn't enter yourself." "Thanks." Harry tossed a stone into the water. "Wish everyone else did." "What happened after you went with the other champions? You seemed strange when you came back." Harry hesitated. "Something weird happened with Fleur Delacour." Hermione raised an eyebrow. "Weird how?" "Like, magic. When our eyes met, I felt this pull. And there was this blue light between us, just for a second." He shrugged uncomfortably. "Probably just the goblet's magic affecting everyone." "Maybe." Hermione looked thoughtful. "Or maybe not. Fleur's part Veela, isn't she?" "Yeah, I think so." "Why?" "Veela have their own ancient magic. I've read they can form unique magical bonds." Harry groaned. "Fantastic. More magical destiny stuff. Just what I need." "I'm not saying that's what happened," Hermione said quickly. "But we should find out more. I'll check the library." "Of course you will," Harry grinned, feeling slightly better. His improved mood lasted exactly until breakfast, when he faced the hostile stares of 3 houses and the ugly, "Potter stinks" badges some Slytherins were wearing. "Just ignore them," Hermione advised as they found seats. "Easy for you to say." Harry stabbed a sausage. "You're not the cheating champion." The Beauxbatons students entered, Fleur at their center. Harry felt a strange ripple through the great hall, boys straightening, conversation stopping mid-sentence. Even some of the girls looked dazed. "What's happening?" Harry whispered to Hermione. "Veela Allure," she whispered back. "It's a natural magic that affects people attracted to women. Makes them act foolishly to impress her." Harry watched Ron across the table tipping pumpkin juice down his front while staring at Fleur. Other boys were having similar accidents. "Why isn't it affecting me?" Harry asked. Hermione studied him with narrowed eyes. "That's an excellent question." Across the hall, Fleur had noticed the same thing. She was deliberately looking at each Hogwarts table, watching boys fumble and stare. But when her gaze landed on Harry, he just gave her a small nod of recognition before returning to his breakfast. She frowned and walked directly toward him. "Harry Potter," she said, stopping behind him. "I wish to speak with you." The hall went silent. Harry turned slowly. Okay. Now. After breakfast, perhaps. By Z Lake." Harry nodded, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes watching them. "Sure. 20 minutes. Fleur gave a curt nod and returned to her table. Immediately, whispers erupted throughout the hall. "What was that about?" Hermione asked. "No idea." Harry kept his voice casual, but his stomach churned with anxiety. "Guess I'll find out." 19 minutes later, Harry waited by the lake, skipping stones to calm his nerves. Fleur approached with 2 other Beauxbatons girls trailing behind. "You may go," she told them in French. They hesitated but eventually left, casting curious glances back. "You wanted to talk?" Harry prompted when they were alone. Fleur studied him intently. "You are immune to my allure." It wasn't a question, but Harry nodded. "Seems that way." "That should not be possible." Her blue eyes narrowed. "Only those with existing magical bonds or certain magical creatures can resist Veela Allure." "Well, I don't have any magical bonds that I know of," Harry said. And I'm definitely not a magical creature. Are you sure? Fleur took a step closer. About Z-bonds? Pretty sure I'd notice being magically bonded to someone. Not all bonds are obvious. Some are dormant until activated. She raised her hand slowly. May I try something? Harry hesitated, then nodded. Fleur extended her hand until it was inches from his face. She closed her eyes in concentration, and her skin began to glow faintly. Harry felt warm magic washing over him, like standing near a fire. What are you? He began, but stopped when a visible thread of silvery light formed between them, connecting his chest to hers. Fleur's eyes flew open. Impossible, she whispered, snatching her hand back. The light vanished. Do you know what this means? Not really, no. It means we need to speak with Madame Maxime. And your headmaster. Fleur looked genuinely shaken. There is a possibility, but it has not happened in centuries. What hasn't? Fleur shook her head. I need to be sure before I say more. We will speak after I consult with my headmistress. She turned to leave, then paused. Do you feel anything unusual when we are near each other? Harry thought about the strange pull, the brief visions of blue fire. Maybe. Something like recognition. Fleur nodded slowly. Meet me at the trophy room tonight after dinner. And tell no one about this. Before Harry could respond, she was gone, silver blonde hair streaming behind her as she strode toward the Beauxbatons carriage. That afternoon, Harry faced another ordeal, the weighing of the wand ceremony. He entered the small classroom to find the other champions already there. Cedric smiled nervously. Crumb leaned against the wall, scowling. Fleur sat primly in a corner chair but jumped to her feet when Harry entered. You're late, said Bagman, but Fleur interrupted. Before we begin, I wish to speak with Madame Maxime and Professeur Dumbledore. Her accent thickened with urgency. It is important. We're on a schedule, Miss Delacour, Bagman protested. It concerns ZE tournament, Fleur insisted. And Monsieur Potter. Harry felt his face heat as everyone turned to look at him. Perhaps a brief word, Dumbledore said mildly. Miss Delacour, Mr. Potter, shall we step outside? They followed Dumbledore into the corridor where Madame Maxime waited, towering over them. What is so urgent, Fleur? Maxime asked in French. Fleur took a deep breath. My allure does not affect him. And I've tested the magical resonance. It matches the pattern described in our family grimoire. Maxime's eyes widened. She fired rapid French questions that Harry couldn't follow. Fleur responded just as quickly, occasionally gesturing toward him. Fascinating, Dumbledore murmured, eyes twinkling. May I ask what pattern you've observed, Miss Delacour? Fleur hesitated, glancing at Harry. It is a Veela matter, headmaster. Very rare. I would prefer to research further before discussing it openly. Of course, Dumbledore nodded. Though I suspect Mr. Potter has a right to know. Know what? Harry asked, frustrated. Can someone please tell me what's going on? Fleur turned to face him. Tonight, she promised. After dinner. I will explain everything then. Madame Maxime placed a massive hand on Fleur's shoulder. We will both be there, she said. This requires proper guidance. They returned to the ceremony, where Ollivander examined their wands. Harry noticed Fleur watching him throughout, her expression calculating. When Rita Skeeter tried to pull Harry aside for an interview, Fleur intervened. We are needed for photographs, she said firmly, steering Harry away from the reporter's grasp. Come, Harry. Thanks, Harry muttered as they posed for the Daily Prophet photographer. Fleur nodded slightly. That woman is a vulture. Be careful what you say around her. As they were leaving, Fleur deliberately brushed past him. Harry felt that same magical tingle, stronger now. From Fleur's sharp intake of breath, she felt it too. "Tonight," she whispered, and then she was gone. Harry paced the trophy room after dinner, waiting. He'd told Hermione he needed time alone, which wasn't entirely a lie. His nerves were stretched thin between tournament stress, Ron's continued cold shoulder, and now this mysterious Veela business. The door opened. Fleur entered, followed by Madame Maxime, Dumbledore, and an elegant blonde woman Harry didn't recognize. "Mr. Potter," Dumbledore said pleasantly, "may I introduce Fleur Delacour, Fleur's mother. She has graciously joined us via international Fleur to discuss a matter of some importance." Apollon stepped forward, studying Harry intently. Up close, her resemblance to Fleur was striking, the same silvery blonde hair, the same perfect features, though with subtle lines of age around her eyes. "So this is the young man," she said in lightly accented English. "May I?" She gestured toward him. Harry nodded cautiously. Apollon circled him slowly, her wand emitting a faint silver light. As she completed the circle, the light changed to a vibrant blue that pulsed between Harry and Fleur. "Extraordinary," Apollon breathed. "It is true." "What's true?" Harry asked, his patience finally breaking. "Will someone please tell me what's happening?" Fleur stepped forward. "You are immune to my Veela Allure." "Yes, we established that this morning. What you do not understand is that this should be impossible." Fleur's eyes fixed on his. "Only 3 types of people can resist Veela Allure, those already under the influence of powerful love magic, certain magical creatures with their own protection, and—" She hesitated. "And the destined mate of a Veela," Apollon finished softly. Harry stared at them. "The what?" "It is ancient magic," Madame Maxime explained. "Very rare. Only a handful of cases recorded in the last 1,000 years. But what does it mean?" Harry looked from face to face. "It means," Fleur said slowly, "that our magic recognizes each other. That we are compatible in ways beyond normal wizards and witches." "Compatible?" Harry repeated. "You mean like soulmates?" Fleur winced. "That term is a simplification. But in essence, yes. Our magic believes we would form a powerful bond." "Our magic believes?" Harry ran a hand through his hair. "Magic doesn't think. It doesn't make decisions. Ancient magic follows patterns we barely understand," Dumbledore interjected gently. "This particular pattern suggests that you and Miss Delacour have complementary magical signatures. This is just—" Harry paced across the room. "I'm 14. I don't want a magical destiny forcing me into some relationship." Fleur flinched slightly, but nodded. "I understand your frustration. I too find this unexpected and inconvenient." "Inconvenient?" Harry laughed without humor. "My life is one inconvenience after another. First Voldemort, then this tournament, now this." "No one is forcing anything, Mr. Potter," Apollon said firmly. "The magic merely indicates potential. What you and my daughter choose to do with this information is entirely up to you." Harry took a deep breath. "So what exactly happens now?" "For now, nothing needs to happen," Dumbledore assured him. "Though I suggest you and Miss Delacour take time to understand this connection, as it may affect your magic." "How?" Harry asked. "That is what we must research," Fleur said. "This is rare even among Veela families. And there's the tournament to consider," Madame Maxime added. "You are still competitors." "Indeed," Dumbledore nodded. "Though I see no reason why this should impact the competition, provided you both proceed with caution." Harry glanced at Fleur, who looked as uncomfortable as he felt. "Fine. I'll read whatever books you suggest, but I'm not agreeing to anything beyond that." "That is fair," Apollon said with a small smile. "Fleur will share what resources we have." She turned to her daughter and added something in rapid French. Fleur nodded, then addressed Harry. Perhaps we could meet tomorrow. In the library? Sure, Harry sighed. After lunch? As they finalized details, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken another complicated turn. Just once, he'd like magic to make things simpler, not harder. The news spread faster than Harry thought possible. By breakfast the next morning, everyone seemed to know something was happening between him and Fleur. Special connection with the Beauxbatons champion? Heard there was magic between them, literally. Potter's done it again, first the tournament, now the Veela. Harry slouched at the Gryffindor table, trying to ignore the whispers. Hermione sat beside him, having extracted most of the story from him last night. How did everyone find out so quickly? He muttered. Rita Skeeter was lurking around the trophy room, Hermione said grimly, passing him the Daily Prophet. Look. The headline blared, Boy WHO lived and Veela champion, a tournament romance. Below was a photo of Harry and Fleur during yesterday's wand weighing, standing suspiciously close together, though Harry knew they'd been at least 3 feet apart. Fantastic, Harry groaned. The article was worse. Harry Potter, 14, controversially selected as a 4th Triwizard champion, appears to have found comfort in the arms of his gorgeous competitor, Fleur Delacour, 17, part Veela champion of Beauxbatons. Sources close to Hogwarts confirm the pair have been meeting secretly and displaying unusual magical phenomena when together. There's definitely something unnatural going on, says Draco Malfoy, 14, a fellow student. Potter's always seeking attention, and now he's bewitched a Veela. My father says the Ministry should investigate. Indeed, Ministry sources confirm they are looking into reports of unauthorized magical bonds forming between the champions. This is a nightmare, Harry muttered, pushing the paper away. Now the Ministry's involved. Skeeter exaggerates everything, Hermione said bracingly. I'm sure it's not as bad as, she broke off as Fleur approached their table, her expression thunderous. She slapped a letter down in front of Harry. From my father, she said tightly. The French Ministry is sending an investigator. This is becoming a diplomatic incident. Harry skimmed the letter, catching phrases like international concern and possible violation of tournament regulations. Great, he said. So both ministries are sticking their noses in. We need to control this narrative, Fleur said, sitting down opposite them. Several nearby Gryffindors gasped at her proximity. Before they turn it into something worse. How? Harry asked. Anything we say, Skeeter will twist. Fleur's eyes narrowed in thought. We need allies. People who can help research and support us. I've already started looking into Veela bonds, Hermione offered. Though Hogwarts library is limited on the subject. Fleur studied Hermione. You are Harry's friend? The one who believes him about the goblet. Hermione nodded firmly. Then yes, we could use your help. Fleur looked back at Harry. My mother is sending books from our family library. They should arrive today. Brilliant, Harry sighed. Nothing says normal 4th year like researching ancient Veela bonds. Fleur's lips twitched slightly. You have a strange sense of humor, Harry Potter. Comes with the territory of having a bizarre life. The hint of a smile vanished as Professor McGonagall approached their table. Mr. Potter, Miss Delacour, she said crisply. The headmaster requests your presence in his office after breakfast. It seems representatives from both ministries wish to speak with you. Harry exchanged a look with Fleur. Already? McGonagall's expression softened slightly. I would suggest you both prepare to answer questions about this connection Skeeter has been writing about. After she left, Fleur leaned closer. Say nothing specific, she advised in a low voice. The nature of Veela bonds is private. I barely know anything about it anyway, Harry pointed out. That is probably for the best, for now. Fleur stood gracefully. Meet me outside the Great Hall after breakfast. As she left, Hermione raised an eyebrow at Harry. She's quite commanding. Yeah, Harry agreed, watching Fleur's retreating figure. Think she's used to people doing what she says. And how do you feel about that? Hermione asked carefully. Harry considered the question. I've had enough people controlling my life. I'm not adding one more to the list, Veela Bond or not. An hour later, Harry sat beside Fleur in Dumbledore's office, facing an intimidating panel, Dumbledore and McGonagall from Hogwarts, Madame Maxime, Ludo Bagman and Barty Crouch Sr. from the British Ministry, and a stern-faced which introduced as Madame Lefebvre from the French Magical Diplomatic Corps. This is highly irregular, Crouch was saying. Inter-champion magical bonds could compromise the integrity of the tournament. We did not choose this, Fleur said firmly. And it will not affect our competition. Can you be certain? Madame Lefebvre asked. Veela magic is ancient and not fully understood, even by those who carry it. Which is precisely why we should proceed with caution rather than alarm, Dumbledore interjected smoothly. These young people have done nothing wrong. Yet reports indicate unusual magical manifestations when they're together, Crouch persisted. The rules clearly state champions must compete individually, without magical assistance. We're not assisting each other, Harry said, frustration mounting. We barely know each other. Then perhaps, Madame Lefebvre suggested, you should both undergo magical monitoring during the tournament tasks. Absolutely not, Fleur said sharply. Veela magic is private. We will not be observed like specimens. The alternative, Crouch said coldly, might be disqualification. The room erupted into heated arguments. Harry caught Fleur's eye across the chaos. She looked as angry as he felt. Without thinking, he reached for her hand under the table. The moment their fingers touched, a visible ripple of blue-silver energy cascaded around them. Everyone fell silent, staring. Fascinating, Dumbledore murmured. Natural magical resonance. This is exactly what concerns us, Crouch said, recovering. Uncontrolled magic between competitors. I suggest a compromise, McGonagall said suddenly. Allow Potter and Miss Delacour to learn about this connection under supervision. If they can demonstrate control before the first task, no monitoring will be necessary. After more debate, a tentative agreement was reached. Harry and Fleur would have 2 weeks to understand and control their magical resonance, with progress reports to both ministries. And Miss Skeeter's reporting? Madame Maxime asked pointedly. I will speak with the Daily Prophet, Dumbledore assured them. Though controlling the press entirely is beyond even my influence. As they left the office, Harry realized he was still holding Fleur's hand. He quickly let go. Sorry about that, he mumbled. I wasn't thinking. It was, not unpleasant, Fleur admitted. Though the reaction was stronger than I expected. They walked in silence for a moment. This is not how I imagined the tournament would be, Fleur said finally. I came to prove myself, not to be entangled in politics and ancient magic. Welcome to my world, Harry said dryly. Nothing's ever simple. Fleur studied him. You truly did not enter yourself in the tournament, did you? No. I really didn't. She nodded slowly. Then we are both victims of circumstance. Perhaps we should work together, at least in understanding this bond. What about the tournament? We remain competitors, Fleur said firmly. But that does not mean we must be enemies. Harry considered this. Deal. So what's our first step? My mother's book should arrive today. We begin there. That afternoon, Harry met Fleur and Hermione in a quiet corner of the library. A stack of ancient-looking leather-bound books sat on the table, along with several scrolls tied with silver ribbon. My mother sent everything our family has on Veela bonds, Fleur explained, sliding a particularly old tome toward Harry. This one has the most information on mate recognition. Harry opened it carefully. The pages were filled with flowing script in French, with occasional diagrams showing intertwining magical flows. I can't read French, he pointed out. I can translate the important sections, Fleur said. Though the magic diagrams should be understandable. Hermione was already absorbed in another book. This is fascinating. Veela magic operates on completely different principles than wand magic. It is elemental, Fleur explained. Connected to emotions and intent rather than specific incantations. Harry studied a diagram showing two magical cores connected by swirling threads of energy. So what exactly happens when Veela find their mates? Fleur hesitated. It varies. In most cases, the connection gradually strengthens through proximity and mutual intent. And if there's no mutual intent? Harry asked carefully. Then the connection remains dormant. Fleur met his eyes steadily. As I said yesterday, this is potential, not destiny. Harry nodded, relieved. So we can just ignore it? Not entirely, Fleur admitted. The resonance we experienced in Dumbledore's office suggests our magic is already responding to each other. Ignoring it completely could lead to unpredictable manifestations. Like what? Hermione asked, looking up from her book. Spontaneous magical discharges. Emotional feedback loops. Possibly even magical depletion if we actively resist the connection. Fleur turned a page in her book. The wisest approach is to acknowledge and understand the connection while maintaining our independence. So we're stuck with each other, Harry sighed. For research purposes, yes. Fleur's tone cooled slightly. I assure you, this is not how I plan to spend my tournament preparation time either. Sorry, Harry said quickly. I didn't mean it like that. This is just a lot. Fleur's expression softened. I understand. This is disruptive for both of us. They worked in silence for a while, with Fleur occasionally translating passages she thought important. Hermione took detailed notes, creating a timeline of known Veela mate bonds throughout history. There are only 7 documented cases in the last 1,000 years, she observed, reviewing her notes. And only 3 where the mate was a wizard with no Veela ancestry. It is extraordinarily rare, Fleur agreed. Which is why the ministries are so interested. Or worried, Harry added grimly. Here's something, Hermione said suddenly. The 1378 case of Isabel Delacour and Edmund Wright. They discovered their bond during a magical duel. Fleur leaned over to see. Yes, they were political opponents whose magic unexpectedly combined during conflict. Does that happen often? Harry asked. Magic combining? It can, Fleur said thoughtfully. When both parties are experiencing strong emotions and are focused on similar goals. The first task is in 12 days, Hermione pointed out. If your magic reacts during the task. We need to practice, Fleur concluded. Learn to control how our magic interacts. How do we do that? Harry asked. Fleur closed her book decisively. We duel. The room of requirement provided the perfect practice space, large enough for proper dueling but private enough to avoid spectators. Harry had discovered it last year during midnight wanderings, and now it had configured itself into an ideal training room with cushioned floors and protective wards. This room is remarkable, Fleur observed, testing the wards with a detection spell. Beauxbatons has nothing like it. Hogwarts is full of secrets, Harry said, removing his robe and rolling up his sleeves. So, how do we do this? First, we establish a baseline, Fleur explained, moving to one end of the dueling platform. We cast simple spells independently to see how our magic behaves in proximity. They began with basic charms, Lumos, Wingardium Leviosa, simple transfigurations. Nothing unusual happened until they cast simultaneously. Then, their spells seemed to brighten and strengthen, with a faint blue-silver sheen surrounding them. Magical enhancement, Fleur noted, looking pleased. The books mentioned this possibility. Next, they tried defensive magic. Harry's Protego shield shimmered with unusual intensity when Fleur cast minor jinxes against it. Your shield is drawing power from my attack, Fleur observed. Fascinating. They progressed to more complex spells, carefully documenting each interaction. Sometimes their magic simply strengthened each other's. Other times, unexpected effects occurred. Harry's Expelliarmus combined with Fleur's Impedimenta created a spell that not only disarmed but temporarily froze the training dummy. This could be useful, Harry admitted, watching the dummy slowly regain movement. If we can control it. Control is precisely what we need to demonstrate, Fleur reminded him. Try to resist the connection this time. Cast your spell while actively thinking of containing your magic. Harry tried, concentrating on keeping his magic contained as he cast a stunning spell. For a moment, it seemed to work, the red beam looked normal. Then Fleur cast her own spell, and both streams of light immediately twisted toward each other, combining into a spiral of red and blue that hit the dummy with explosive force. This is harder than I expected, Harry admitted, helping Fleur repair the damaged dummy. We are working against ancient magic, Fleur said, frustration evident in her voice. Perhaps direct opposition is not the answer. What about channeling it? Harry suggested. Instead of fighting the connection, we direct where the combined magic goes. Fleur considered this. That might work. Let's try again. This time, when they cast simultaneously, Harry visualized a pathway for their combined magic, straight toward the target and nowhere else. Fleur seemed to understand his intent immediately, adding her own visualization. Their spells still combined, but in a controlled stream that hit exactly where they intended. Yes. Fleur exclaimed, looking genuinely pleased for the first time since they'd begun. That's it. They practiced this technique with increasing complexity, learning to direct their combined magic with precision. By the end of 2 hours, they could reliably control when and how their spells interacted. This is good progress, Fleur said as they took a break. But we still need to practice with more combat-oriented spells if we're to be ready for the first task. Harry took a drink of water. Any idea what the task might be? Hagrid wants to meet me tonight, Fleur said casually. Your groundskeeper. Madame Maxime suggested it might be informative. Hagrid? Harry frowned. That's strange. Unless. A suspicion formed. Hagrid loves dangerous creatures. If the first task involves magical beasts. Then we should be prepared, Fleur finished. Would you like to join us tonight? We could continue our practice afterward. Harry hesitated. Won't Madame Maxime mind? What she doesn't know won't hurt her, Fleur said with a slight smile. Meet me by the edge of the forest at midnight. Harry slipped out of the castle under his invisibility cloak, navigating by moonlight to the meeting point. Fleur was already waiting, wrapped in a silvery cloak that shimmered in the moonlight. You're late, she whispered as he appeared beside her. Sorry, had to dodge Filch. Harry tucked his cloak away. Where's Hagrid meeting you? He told Madame Maxime to come to his cabin, but I saw them heading into the forest 10 minutes ago. They followed discreetly, staying far enough behind to remain unnoticed but close enough to see Hagrid's lantern bobbing ahead. Soon, an orange glow lit the trees, accompanied by distant roars that made Harry's skin prickle. What is that? Fleur whispered, unconsciously moving closer to Harry. They crept forward until they reached the edge of a massive clearing. What they saw made them both freeze. Dragons. 4 enormous, fire-breathing dragons, secured inside reinforced enclosures by dozens of wizards. Is that Charlie Weasley? Harry murmured, spotting a familiar redhead among the dragon handlers. Dragons, Fleur breathed, her face pale in the firelight. The first task is dragons. They watched silently as Hagrid and Madame Maxime toured the enclosures, Charlie explaining the different breeds, Swedish shortsnout, common Welsh green, Chinese fireball, and a particularly vicious Hungarian horntail. One for each champion, Harry realized. We'll have to get past them somehow. A dragon handler lost control of a restraint, and the horntail sent a massive jet of flame skyward. Harry felt Fleur flinch beside him. Instinctively, he placed a steadying hand on her arm. The moment they touched, their combined magic surged, creating a brief but visible shield around them. Several dragon handlers turned toward the flash of light. "We need to go," Harry whispered urgently, pulling Fleur back into the trees. They ran until they were safely distant, then stopped to catch their breath. "Our magic," Fleur gasped. "It responded to danger." "Protective instinct," Harry nodded. "Good to know, but we need better control. If that happens during the task." "We need more practice," Fleur agreed. "And a plan for the dragons." They walked back toward the castle in thoughtful silence. "You should tell Cedric," Fleur said suddenly. "Karkaroff will surely inform Crumb, and Madame Maxime has told me. Cedric shouldn't be the only one unprepared." Harry nodded. "I'll tell him tomorrow." At the edge of the forest, they paused. The castle loomed ahead, windows glowing warmly against the night sky. "Thank you for coming tonight," Fleur said quietly. "It helps, having someone to share this with. Even if it's just the annoying boy you're magically stuck with." Harry joked. Fleur studied him for a moment. "You are not what I expected, Harry Potter. Is that good or bad?" "I haven't decided yet." A small smile played at her lips. "But I'm beginning to think this bond might not be entirely unfortunate." It was a small concession, but Harry felt oddly pleased as they parted ways, Fleur to the Beauxbatons carriage and Harry back to Gryffindor Tower. The next morning brought another unwelcome surprise in the form of Rita Skeeter's latest article, "Forbidden Magic Between Champions." Ministry investigates ancient Veela bond. Sources within the ministry confirm that Harry Potter and Fleur Delacour are under investigation for a rare magical phenomenon known as a Veela mate bond. This ancient magic could give them an unfair advantage, says Dolores Umbridge, senior undersecretary to the minister. "We're particularly concerned about a foreign magical creature influencing a British minor." The article went on to quote concerned parents worried about creature magic at Hogwarts, and even suggested the bond might be connected to Potter's controversial tournament entry. "Creature magic?" Fleur spat, throwing down the paper during their library session. "This is blatant prejudice." "Welcome to British wizarding politics," Hermione said grimly. "The ministry has always been biased against non-human magical beings." "This Umbridge woman," Fleur fumed. "Who is she?" "Fudge's right hand," Harry explained. "And apparently not a fan of Veela." "My mother warned me about British attitudes," Fleur said, pacing between bookshelves. "But to see it so openly displayed in your press." "We need to focus on the task," Harry reminded her. "Dragons, remember?" Fleur took a deep breath. "Yes, you're right. We have less than a week now." They returned to their research, now split between Veela bonds and dragon weaknesses. Hermione had compiled extensive notes on both topics. "Dragons' eyes are their most vulnerable point," she explained, showing them a detailed anatomy diagram. "But their hide is nearly impervious to most spells. So a direct magical assault is useless," Harry concluded. "We need something indirect." "What are your strengths?" Fleur asked him. "In combat magic?" Harry considered. "I'm good with defensive spells." "And flying?" Fleur's eyes lit up. "Flying. Could you summon your broom during the task?" "With a strong enough accio, maybe." Harry looked thoughtful. "What about you? What's your specialty?" "Charm work, particularly enchantments affecting perception," Fleur said. "And some Veela magic, though nothing powerful enough to affect a dragon directly." They began developing individual strategies, occasionally testing how their magic interacted when casting key spells. By the end of the day, they had workable plans and better control over their magical resonance. "I think we're ready for the ministry demonstration tomorrow," Harry said as they packed up. Fleur nodded. We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. As they left the library, they encountered Draco Malfoy and his Slytherin cohorts in the corridor. Malfoy wore a particularly smug expression. Well, he drawled. Potter and his Veela. Father says the ministry's quite concerned about your unnatural connection. Your father should concern himself with his own affairs, Fleur said coldly. Careful, Malfoy smirked. The ministry's taking a hard line on creature influence these days. Might want to watch yourself, Delacour. Harry stepped forward, anger flaring. Say that again, Malfoy. Harry, don't, Fleur warned, placing a restraining hand on his arm. The moment she touched him, their magic surged visibly, a brief flare of blue-silver light that made the Slytherin step back in surprise. See? Malfoy recovered quickly. Unnatural. Wait until my father hears about this. They pushed past, leaving Harry fuming. Sorry, he muttered to Fleur. I shouldn't have reacted. Your loyalty is admirable, Fleur said. But we cannot afford to lose control, especially not before tomorrow's demonstration. Harry nodded, still angry but recognizing she was right. Get some sleep. I'll see you tomorrow. The ministry demonstration took place in an unused classroom, with representatives from both ministries present along with the tournament organizers and school heads. Miss Delacour, Mr. Potter, Barty Crouch began formally. You are here to demonstrate control over the magical resonance phenomenon recently observed between you. We're prepared to demonstrate, Fleur replied with professional calm, though Harry noticed the tension in her shoulders. They began with simple spells, showing how they could cast independently without interference. Then they demonstrated controlled resonance, allowing their magic to combine in specific, limited ways. Impressive, Madame Lefebvre acknowledged. But tournament conditions will be more stressful. How can you assure us you'll maintain control during the tasks? We've simulated combat conditions, Harry explained. Including unexpected threats and high-pressure situations. Show us, Crouch demanded. Fleur nodded at Harry, and they moved to opposite ends of the classroom. What followed was a carefully choreographed magical display, alternating between independent spellcasting and deliberate magical combinations, all while maintaining precise control. For the finale, they simultaneously cast their strongest spells, Harry's Patronus and Fleur's Veela-influenced fire charm. The silver stag and blue flames circled each other without merging, then dissipated on command. A murmur of approval ran through the observers. Well done, Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling. I believe that demonstrates sufficient control. Crouch looked less convinced but nodded reluctantly. Very well. You may compete without magical monitoring, provided there are no incidents before the first task. As the officials filed out, Ludo Bagman approached them. Fascinating display, he said cheerfully. Could be quite the advantage in the tournament, eh? We will compete fairly, Fleur said firmly. This connection will not affect the competition. Of course, Bagman smiled. Just between us, though, the dragons are quite the challenge. Wouldn't blame you for using every advantage. Harry and Fleur exchanged alarmed looks. Dragons? Harry repeated innocently. Oh. Bagman looked flustered. Shouldn't have said that. Forget I mentioned it. Complete surprise and all that. He hurried away, leaving them trying not to laugh at his poor attempt at covering his slip. Well, at least we're officially cleared, Harry said as they left the classroom. For now, Fleur reminded him. The real test will be the task itself. The morning of the first task dawned clear and cold. Harry barely slept, his mind racing with dragon strategies and worries about their magical control. At breakfast, he picked at his food while Hermione provided last-minute advice. Remember, the conjunctivitis curse might work, but aim carefully. And don't forget the summoning charm we practiced. Thanks, Hermione, Harry said, grateful for her support. I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be. An owl swooped down, delivering a small package in front of Harry. The attached note read simply, "For luck." Inside was a delicate silver chain with a small flame-shaped pendant. Harry recognized it as Veela craftsmanship from the books they'd studied. "It's a focus charm," Hermione explained after examining it. "Fleur Delacour must have sent it. It's meant to help stabilize magical connections." "Should I wear it?" Harry asked uncertainly. "It's not an advantage," Hermione assured him. "More like training wheels. It won't enhance your magic, just help prevent accidental resonance." Harry slipped the chain around his neck, tucking the pendant beneath his shirt. Immediately, he felt a subtle warmth against his skin. At the champion's tent, Fleur looked pale but determined. She wore an identical pendant over her Beauxbatons uniform. "My mother sent them," she confirmed when Harry showed her his. "For safety, not advantage." Ludo Bagman gathered them to explain the task: retrieve a golden egg guarded by a dragon, and had them draw miniature dragons from a bag to determine their order and opponent. Fleur drew the Welsh green, Crumb the Chinese fireball, Cedric the Swedish short snout, and Harry, predictably, got the Hungarian horntail. As the other champions were called one by one, Harry and Fleur sat in tense silence. When Fleur's turn came, she stood and smoothed her robes. "Good luck," Harry offered. Fleur hesitated, then quickly squeezed his hand. "You too, Harry Potter. Try not to get burned." Harry watched her leave, feeling the pendant warm against his chest. Alone in the tent, he focused on his strategy, trying to ignore the distant roars and crowd reactions. Finally, his name was called. As Harry stepped into the arena, the crowd's roar almost matched the horntails. The massive dragon crouched protectively over her eggs, yellow eyes fixed on Harry with murderous intent. Harry raised his wand. "Accio Firebolt," he shouted, then dove behind a boulder as the horntail sent a jet of flame his way. Seconds stretched like hours as he waited, dodging occasional fire blasts. Then he heard it, the whistle of his approaching broom. The firebolt shot into the arena, hovering beside him. Harry mounted in one fluid motion and soared skyward. Flying felt right, natural, instinctive. He circled the dragon, testing its reactions, looking for an opening. The horntail tracked him, reluctant to leave her eggs. Harry dove suddenly, fainting toward the eggs. The dragon lunged, flames erupting toward him. At the last second, he pulled up sharply, feeling the heat singe his robes. The crowd gasped. As he circled again, Harry felt the pendant growing hotter. Glancing toward the stands, he spotted Fleur watching intently, her own pendant glowing visibly even from a distance. Something clicked in Harry's mind, an awareness of air currents, of thermal patterns created by the dragon's fire. Without consciously deciding, he adjusted his flight path to ride these currents, gaining speed and maneuverability. His next dive was perfectly timed with the dragon's breath, using the superheated air to boost his velocity. He streaked past the dragon's head, too fast for her to track, and snatched the golden egg from the nest. The crowd erupted as Harry soared back to safety, egg secured under his arm. The pendant cooled against his skin as he landed, adrenaline still coursing through him. Madame Pomfrey fussed over minor burns while judges awarded scores. Harry barely registered the numbers, his attention drawn to Fleur pushing through the crowd toward him. "That was..." She began, then shook her head, seemingly at a loss for words. "How did you do?" Harry asked. "Second place, behind you." Fleur touched her pendant thoughtfully. "Did you feel it? During your flight?" Harry nodded. "It was like... I could sense the air patterns." "Was that?" "Veela have natural affinity for air currents," Fleur explained quietly. "It appears our connection shared that ability." Before they could discuss further, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. Rita Skeeter pushed to the front, quick quotes quill already scribbling. "Harry, Fleur. The pendant magic clearly helped during your task." Was this the advantage the ministry feared? There was no advantage, Fleur said firmly. The pendants merely stabilized our natural magic. So you admit your magic was active during the task? Skeeter pressed. Harry stepped forward. We performed independently, as the rules require. Any magical resonance was minor and did not affect the outcome. More questions followed, but Dumbledore and Madame Maxime soon arrived to shepherd them away from the press. As they walked back toward the castle, Harry realized something had fundamentally changed. The pendant still rested against his chest, but the awareness of Fleur, her magic, her presence, remained even without its warmth. Their connection had deepened, and Harry wasn't entirely sure how he felt about that. I should be furious, Fleur said later that evening. They sat by the lake, away from celebrations and curious eyes. You beat my score by placing yourself in ridiculous danger. Says the witch who put her dragon to sleep and nearly got roasted when it snored fire, Harry countered. Fleur's lips twitched. We are both foolishly brave, it seems. Probably why our magic gets along. Harry tossed a stone into the lake, watching ripples spread across the dark surface. How long will this connection last? The books weren't clear. Fleur was silent for a moment. That depends on us. If we choose to strengthen it, it could become permanent. If we distance ourselves after the tournament, it will likely fade. And what do you want? Harry asked, turning to face her. I don't know, Fleur admitted. A week ago, I would have said I wanted nothing to do with this bond. Now. She shrugged elegantly. You are not what I expected, Harry Potter. You've mentioned that before, Harry smiled. Still haven't decided if it's good or bad. Good, Fleur said simply. Different, but good. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the giant squid create lazy patterns on the lake's surface. The golden egg sat between them, still unopened. We should figure out the clue, Harry said eventually. Together? Fleur raised an eyebrow. We are still competitors, you know. True, Harry acknowledged. But I think we've proven we're stronger together than apart. Fleur considered this, then nodded. Very well. Let's hear what the egg has to say. Harry opened the golden egg, and immediately, a horrible screeching filled the air. He slammed it shut, wincing. Well, Fleur said dryly, that was informative. Maybe it's a code. Harry suggested, rubbing his ears. Or perhaps it needs specific conditions to be understood. Fleur looked thoughtful. In Veela lore, there are messages that can only be heard underwater. Underwater? Harry repeated. Worth a try, I suppose. The prefect's bathroom has a pool-sized tub, Fleur said. Cedric mentioned it earlier. Harry raised an eyebrow. Getting friendly with the competition? Professional courtesy, Fleur sniffed, though her eyes twinkled. He congratulated me on my score. Fine, prefect's bathroom it is. Harry gathered the egg. Tonight? After curfew, Fleur agreed. Fewer curious eyes. As they walked back toward the castle, Harry felt strangely content. The first task was behind them, they'd managed their magical connection, and somehow, against all odds, he'd formed a genuine friendship with the proud Veela champion. Maybe, just maybe, this tournament wouldn't be a complete disaster after all. Chapter 2, Fire and Water. Remind me why I'm sneaking around after curfew with a screaming egg and a foreign champion? Harry whispered as they crept through Hogwarts' shadowy corridors. Fleur glanced back, moonlight catching her silver hair. Because you're tired of dragons and need a proper bath? Funny, Harry muttered, checking the Marauder's map. Filch is on the 3rd floor. We should be clear to the prefect's bathroom. They reached the door without incident. Harry muttered the password Cedric had shared, Pine Fresh, and they slipped inside, securing the door behind them. The prefect's bathroom was impressive, marble everything, stained glass windows, and a swimming pool masquerading as a bathtub. Dozens of golden taps lined the edges, each featuring different colored jewels. Now this, Fleur said appreciatively, is a proper bath. Right, Harry fidgeted with the egg. So do we just throw it in? Fleur rolled her eyes. We need to listen underwater. She turned several taps, and the tub began filling with steaming water and multicolored bubbles. Don't worry, Potter. I'm not asking you to strip down. Harry's face heated. I didn't think, your face suggests otherwise, Fleur teased, then added more gently, we can both keep our clothes on. Just take off your outer robes. Harry removed his school robes, leaving his shirt and trousers. Fleur likewise removed her blue Beauxbatons jacket but kept her blouse and skirt. The tub filled quickly, bubbles piling so high they obscured most of the water. Ready? Harry asked, clutching the egg. Fleur nodded, and they both knelt beside the tub. Harry submerged the egg and opened it. Instead of screeching, they heard faint music. We need to put our heads underwater, Fleur realized. Taking deep breaths, they plunged their heads beneath the surface. An eerie chorus of voices sang, "Come seek us where our voices sound, we cannot sing above the ground, and while you're searching ponder this, we've taken what you'll sorely miss, an hour long you'll have to look, and to recover what we took, but past an hour, the prospect's black, too late, it's gone, it won't come back." They surfaced, gasping. "Mere people," Fleur said immediately. "In the Black Lake. They're going to take something we'll sorely miss," Harry added, wiping water from his glasses. "And we have an hour to find it underwater. The second task is February 24th, Fleur calculated. That gives us nearly 3 months to prepare." 3 months to figure out how to breathe underwater for an hour, Harry frowned. Not exactly my area of expertise. Fleur was already thinking ahead. Bubblehead charm would work, though maintaining it for a full hour requires significant concentration. What's a bubblehead charm? Fleur demonstrated, creating a transparent bubble around her head. It filters air from water, she explained, her voice slightly muffled. Standard in French magical education. Of course it is, Harry muttered. Think you could teach me? Perhaps. Fleur dropped the charm. Though with our connection, we might discover more, innovative solutions. Harry closed the egg and set it aside. I've been meaning to ask, what happened during the first task? When I could sense the air currents. Fleur sat on the edge of the tub, trailing her fingers through the bubbles. Veela are creatures of air and fire. We naturally sense thermal patterns, air movements. It appears our connection shared that ability with you. Could it work both ways? Could you gain something from my magic? Theoretically. Fleur looked thoughtful. What would you consider your magical strengths? Harry considered this. Defense spells. And I'm pretty good at sensing danger. Useful for the tournament, Fleur acknowledged. Perhaps we should test these possibilities. Harry noticed her shiver slightly. Despite the steam rising from the bath, the marble room was chilly. Without thinking, he cast a warming charm, not on himself, but on the air around them both. Fleur's eyes widened as the charm settled like a comfortable blanket. That was different. What do you mean? Targeted environmental magic without a specific focus object, she explained. Most wizards cast warming charms on people or specific items. You just altered the ambient temperature of the space between us. Harry hadn't realized there was anything unusual about his casting. Is that good? It's interesting, Fleur said carefully. And potentially very useful for underwater magic. A noise from the corridor startled them both, footsteps approaching. The map, Harry whispered urgently, unfolding the Marauder's map. It's Moody. They scrambled to gather their things. Fleur quickly vanished the bathwater while Harry secured the egg. He'll see us if we leave now, Harry realized. And I didn't bring my invisibility cloak. Fleur grabbed his arm. There's another way. She pulled him toward a tall stained glass window depicting a mermaid. Your castle has secrets, yes. So does this bathroom. She pressed a specific scale on the mermaid's tail. The window swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. How did you, Madame Maxime attended a Triwizard tournament here years ago, Fleur explained, urging him into the passage. She mentioned certain escape routes. The passage was tight but navigable, eventually opening into a corridor on the 5th floor. That was close, Harry said as they emerged. Thanks. Fleur brushed dust from her skirt. Consider it professional courtesy between champions. Her tone was light, but Harry detected warmth beneath it. So, underwater breathing, he redirected. When do we start practicing? Tomorrow. Room of requirement, after dinner. Fleur glanced out a nearby window. The lake will be freezing by February. We should acclimate ourselves gradually. We? Harry raised an eyebrow. I thought we were competitors. Fleur gave him an appraising look. We are. But research is more efficient with two minds, is it not? Harry couldn't argue with that logic. Tomorrow, then. As they parted ways, Harry found himself looking forward to their practice session more than he probably should. The room of requirement outdid itself. When they arrived the next evening, it had transformed into a training facility complete with a deep pool, reference books on water magic, and various underwater breathing apparatus for practice. Your castle continues to impress, Fleur said, examining the setup. It does seem to be taking our training seriously, Harry agreed. Almost like it wants us to succeed. Hogwarts has always favored those who seek knowledge, came Hermione's voice as she entered behind them. Hope you don't mind me joining. I've been researching underwater magic options. The more minds, the better, Fleur welcomed her. What have you found? Hermione spread out several scrolls of notes. Bubblehead charm is the standard approach, but there are alternatives. Transfiguration, partially turning yourself into a water-breathing creature, though that's newt level and risky. There's gillyweed, a magical plant that gives you gills temporarily. And several potion options, though they're complex. Gillyweed sounds promising, Harry said. Where would we get it? Snape would have some, Hermione replied, but I doubt he'd share with you. We could order it by owl, Fleur suggested. Though quality varies with commercial suppliers. Let's master the bubblehead charm first, Harry decided. Then explore backups. Fleur nodded approvingly and began demonstrating the charm's wand movement, a tight spiral followed by an upward flick. Visualization is crucial. You must hold the image of a perfect, sealed bubble in your mind while casting. Harry practiced the movement repeatedly before attempting the spell. His first tries produced misshapen bubbles that popped immediately. Hermione mastered it on her third attempt, while Harry struggled with consistency. You're overthinking it, Fleur observed after his seventh failed attempt. She stepped behind him, placing her hand over his on the wand. Like this. Fluid, not mechanical. The moment their hands touched, that now familiar magical resonance hummed between them. When they cast together, a perfect bubble formed around Harry's head. I felt how you shaped the magic, Harry realized. It's about containing air, not creating a physical barrier. Exactly, Fleur smiled. Now try alone. His next attempt succeeded perfectly. The bubble felt strange but comfortable, like wearing an invisible helmet filled with fresh air. Now for the real test, Fleur gestured toward the pool. Underwater sustainability. They took turns submerging themselves, testing how long they could maintain the charm. Hermione timed them and took detailed notes. Harry, you're holding it longer than expected for a first session, she observed after his third attempt. Almost 8 minutes. It feels natural, Harry said, puzzled. Like the magic wants to stay in place. Fleur exchanged a meaningful look with Hermione. Your pendant, she said, gesturing to the flame-shaped charm still hanging around Harry's neck. It's stabilizing your magic. Harry touched the pendant. Is that cheating? No, Fleur said firmly. It doesn't enhance your magic, just prevents interference. The tournament rules don't forbid magical focus items. Most wands have cores that serve similar purposes. Speaking of interference, Hermione interjected, have you considered what happens if you're both underwater simultaneously? Will your magical connection react differently? They hadn't thought of that. Without discussion, both Harry and Fleur cast the bubblehead charm and submerged themselves in the pool. The moment they were both underwater, Harry felt the pendant warm against his chest. The water around them seemed to shift, becoming easier to move through. When they surfaced, both looked startled. Did you feel that? Harry asked. The water resistance changed. Veela magic affecting fluid dynamics, Fleur said thoughtfully. My mother mentioned this possibility. Our fire nature doesn't work well underwater, so the magic compensates by altering how water flows around us. Could be useful for swimming faster, Harry pointed out. Or dangerous if we can't control it, Fleur countered. What if it affects other water breathers nearby? Like the mere people, Hermione realized. You could unintentionally draw their attention. They spent the next hour experimenting with various distances and magical intentions, documenting how their connection manifested underwater. By the end of the session, they could control the basic effect, creating areas of reduced water resistance when needed. This is good progress, Fleur acknowledged as they dried off. But we need more practice, preferably in the actual lake. In December. Hermione looked skeptical. That water's nearly freezing. Warming charms, Harry suggested. Like the one I used in the bathroom. Fleur nodded. We'll try a short lake session this weekend. For now, though, I have another matter to discuss. She pulled an envelope from her bag. The Yule Ball has been officially announced. Oh, Harry said, feeling suddenly awkward. Right. That. As champions, we're required to open the dancing, Fleur continued briskly. Given our situation, we should coordinate our approach. Are you suggesting we go together? Harry asked, surprised. Fleur hesitated. It would be the simplest solution, but also the most politically charged. The ministries are still monitoring our interaction. Not to mention Rita Skeeter would have a field day, Hermione added. So what do we do? Harry asked. Go with other people. That might be wisest, Fleur agreed, though Harry thought he detected a hint of reluctance. Though we should still prepare for our magic to interact during the event. Harry felt oddly disappointed but nodded. Makes sense. I should return to the carriage, Fleur gathered her things. Madame Maxime is expecting a report on our progress. After she left, Hermione gave Harry a knowing look. What? He demanded. You wanted to go with her, Hermione said simply. It's complicated, Harry muttered. This whole bond thing is still new, and there's the tournament, and she's 3 years older. And very pretty, and surprisingly nice once you get to know her, Hermione finished. It's okay to admit you like her, Harry. Even if I did, and I'm not saying I do, it doesn't change anything. The ball would just create more problems. Hermione patted his shoulder sympathetically. When has anything in your life ever been simple? News of the Yule Ball spread through Hogwarts like wildfire, turning the castle into a hotbed of romantic speculation and drama. Harry found himself ambushed by giggling groups of girls wherever he went. This is ridiculous, he complained to Ron, who was finally speaking to him again after the first task. I can't walk to class without someone asking me to the ball. Poor Harry Potter, Ron said without sympathy. Too many girls want to dance with the famous champion. Meanwhile, some of us can't get a single date. You could just ask someone, Harry suggested. Like Hermione. Ron looked scandalized. Hermione? She's our friend. So. She's also a girl, in case you hadn't noticed. Course I noticed, Ron muttered. But she wouldn't want to go with me. Before Harry could respond, Fleur entered the great hall for lunch, surrounded by her usual entourage of admirers. Several boys immediately approached her with flowers and stammered invitations. She declined each with practiced politeness. Wonder who she'll go with, Ron said, watching the spectacle. Bet it'll be Diggory or Crumb. Champions sticking together and all that. Harry made a non-committal noise, trying to ignore the twist of something uncomfortable in his stomach. Their underwater practice sessions had continued through December, and with each one, Harry found himself growing more comfortable with Fleur. Beneath her haughty exterior was a wicked sense of humor, fierce intelligence, and surprising kindness. During their last session, they'd spent an hour simply talking after practice, comparing bows batons and Hogwarts, sharing stories about their families, though Harry kept his Desley tales brief, and discussing their futures beyond school. It felt natural. Which was strange, considering the unnatural way they'd been thrown together. Earth to Harry, Ron waved a hand in front of his face. You've been staring at your potatoes for 5 minutes. Sorry, Harry shook himself. Just thinking about the tournament. Sure you were, Ron smirked. Nothing to do with a certain French champion, then. Before Harry could deny it, Hermione joined them, looking unusually pleased. You'll never guess who just asked me to the ball, she said, sitting down. Who? Ron and Harry asked simultaneously. Victor Crumb, Hermione whispered, beaming. Ron's fork clattered to his plate. You're joking. I am not, Hermione said, affronted. He's been coming to the library while I study. Apparently, he likes that I don't giggle or stare at him. But he's, and you're. Ron sputtered. He's what? I'm what? Hermione's eyes narrowed dangerously. Harry intervened before Ron could dig himself deeper. That's brilliant, Hermione. Crumb seems decent, for a Durmstrang bloke. Thank you, Harry, Hermione said pointedly. Unlike some people, Victor actually noticed I'm a girl without it requiring a formal ball announcement. Ron's ears turned red. I know you're a girl. I just didn't think you'd be going to the ball already. Well, I am, Hermione stood abruptly. And I suggest you both find partners before all the good ones are taken. As she stormed off, Ron turned to Harry. Mental, that one. Anyway, who are you asking? Harry hesitated. I'm not sure yet. In truth, there was only one person he wanted to go with, and they'd already decided it wasn't a good idea. Later that afternoon, Harry spotted Fleur alone in the courtyard, reading beneath a tree enchanted to keep snow from falling on its occupants. Without overthinking, he approached. Getting some quiet study time, he asked, gesturing to her book. Fleur looked up, a small smile forming. Attempting to. It's difficult with half the male population trailing after me. I noticed. Harry sat beside her. Having trouble picking a date? Fleur closed her book. I haven't accepted any invitations yet. Though not for lack of offers. Same, Harry admitted. Though I think it's more about the boy who lived than me personally. It's exhausting, isn't it? Being wanted for what you represent rather than who you are. The simple understanding in her voice made something loosen in Harry's chest. Exactly. Everyone sees the scar, the champion, the celebrity. No one just sees Harry. I see Harry, Fleur said quietly. A boy who flies remarkably well, casts warming charms without thinking, and still can't properly pronounce Aquila, despite my repeated corrections. Harry laughed. And I see Fleur. Brilliant, stubborn, secretly kind when no one's watching. Their eyes met, and that now familiar magical resonance hummed between them, subtle but present. We agreed going together would cause problems, Fleur reminded him, though her tone was questioning. We did, Harry acknowledged. But I'm starting to think going with anyone else would feel wrong. Fleur studied him for a moment. The political ramifications will happen regardless, Harry finished. Rita Skeeter's already writing about us. The ministries are already watching. We might as well face it together. A slow smile spread across Fleur's face. Harry Potter, are you asking me to the Yule Ball? I suppose I am, Harry said, surprised by his own boldness. Fleur Delacour, would you do me the honor of attending the Yule Ball with me, complicated magical bonds and nosy reporters included? Fleur pretended to consider it seriously. Well, you are a tolerable dancer, based on our practice sessions. And your French pronunciation is improving, marginally. High praise indeed, Harry grinned. Then yes, Fleur decided. I accept your invitation, complicated consequences and all. As they discussed logistics, Harry felt lighter than he had in weeks. Whatever came from this decision, at least it was their choice, not something forced by the goblet, or the bond, or anyone else. Their decision to attend the Yule Ball together created exactly the stir they'd anticipated. The morning after they'd filed their official attendance forms, Rita Skeeter's byline blazed across the Daily Prophet, Champions in Love, Potter and Delacour confirm relationship, controversial Veela bond to be displayed at Yule Ball. We never said anything about a relationship, Harry groaned, pushing the paper away. Or displaying our bond. Skeeter specializes in creative interpretations, Hermione said dryly. At least the article itself isn't entirely negative. That much was true. While the headline was sensationalized, the body text merely reported that two Triwizard champions would be attending together, with some background on Veela heritage and its rarity in Britain. The real fallout came through official channels. By lunchtime, both Harry and Fleur had received ministry notices requesting their presence for an informational meeting regarding proper protocol for international magical cooperation. They're worried we'll cause a scene, Fleur translated as they compared letters. Or worse, demonstrate unusual magic publicly. Let them worry, Harry said with newfound determination. We've done nothing wrong. The meeting took place that evening in Dumbledore's office. Percy Weasley attended representing the British ministry, while Madame Lefebvre returned for the French contingent. Dumbledore and Madame Maxime were present, along with, surprisingly, Apollon Delacour. Mother? Fleur embraced the elegant woman. I didn't know you were coming. When I heard the ministries were advising you on the ball, I insisted on attending, Apollon explained, giving Percy a cool look. As the foremost expert on Veela social customs. Percy cleared his throat importantly. Yes, well, we appreciate all perspectives. Now, regarding the Yule Ball, there are concerns about the public nature of your situation. What situation would that be, Mr. Weasley? Harry asked innocently. Percy flushed. Your magical connection, of course. The ministry feels it would be prudent to establish guidelines for your public interaction. Guidelines? Fleur repeated, her voice dangerously soft. Madame Lefebvre stepped in smoothly. What Mr. Weasley means is that, given the international attention the Yule Ball will receive, both ministries wish to ensure cultural sensitivities are respected. In other words, Apollon said bluntly, they're worried you'll display Veela magic in front of important guests. The concern, Percy said stiffly, is that unpredictable magical manifestations could be misinterpreted by those unfamiliar with Veela heritage. And how would you suggest we prevent this misinterpretation? Fleur asked, her accent thickening with irritation. Percy produced a scroll. We've prepared recommendations. Limited physical contact. Separate entry and seating except during required champion activities. Magical dampening charms on jewelry and attire, absolutely not, Apollon interrupted. Magical dampening violates Veela cultural autonomy protected under the 1682 Accord. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Perhaps we're approaching this from the wrong angle. Rather than restricting Miss Delacour and Mr. Potter, we could use this opportunity to educate our guests about Veela heritage and its place in European magical society. An excellent suggestion, Madame Maxime nodded enthusiastically. We could incorporate a brief cultural presentation into the evening's entertainment. That would require ministry approval for the curriculum, Percy objected. Not if it's presented as a cultural performance rather than educational content, Apollon countered. The accords are quite clear on that distinction. The discussion continued in this vein, with Harry and Fleur exchanging increasingly amused glances as the adults debated around them. Finally, a compromise was reached. They could attend together without restrictions, but would participate in a short, cultural exchange demonstration during the entertainment portion, supervised by Apollon. Well, that was exhausting, Harry commented as they left the meeting. Welcome to international magical politics, Fleur sighed. Everything must be negotiated, nothing can be simple. At least your mother's on our side, Harry observed. She's formidable. Fleur smiled proudly. You have no idea. She once reduced the French Minister of Magic to tears during a debate on creature rights legislation. I can believe it, Harry said with genuine admiration. Will she stay until the ball? Yes, she's taking guest quarters in Hogsmeade. Fleur hesitated. She'd like to speak with you privately, if you're willing. Harry felt a flutter of nerves. About what? The bond, probably. And perhaps to evaluate the boy escorting her daughter to a formal event. Great, Harry ran a hand through his hair. No pressure or anything. Fleur laughed softly. She already likes you, Harry. But tradition demands a certain vetting process. Veela tradition? Harry guessed. French mother tradition, Fleur corrected with a smirk. Much more terrifying. The meeting with Apollon took place the following afternoon in a private room at the Three Broomsticks. Harry arrived precisely on time, wearing his best school robes and having made a futile attempt to flatten his hair. Apollon greeted him warmly, offering tea from an elegant silver service she'd apparently brought with her. French tea, she explained. A small comfort from home. They exchanged pleasantries about the tournament and his studies before Apollon steered the conversation to more serious matters. You have questions about the bond, she stated rather than asked. It is only natural. Harry nodded. Fleur's explained some of it, and we've read the books you sent, but books can only explain theory, not experience, Apollon finished. What troubles you most, Harry? How much of what I'm feeling is real, and how much is the magic? Harry asked bluntly. Apollon's expression softened. A wise question. The bond cannot create feelings that don't exist, Harry. It can only enhance natural compatibility. So if I like spending time with Fleur. That is entirely you, Apollon assured him. The magic merely removed certain barriers, her allure that typically distorts perceptions, and perhaps some natural caution you might otherwise feel. Harry considered this. And Fleur? Does the bond affect her differently? Veela experienced the bond as a form of recognition, Apollon explained. A sense that your magic harmonizes with hers in a way others do not. But her feelings, her choices, remain her own. That was reassuring, though Harry still had concerns. The books mentioned stages of the bond. What exactly does that mean for us? Apollon sipped her tea thoughtfully. The initial recognition, which you've experienced, is merely the first stage. The bond can deepen through shared magical experiences, trust, and mutual intent. Each subsequent stage brings greater magical resonance but also greater connection. What kind of connection? It varies with each pairing. Some develop emotional awareness of each other. Others share magical abilities more extensively. A few, the deepest bonds, can even communicate without words. Harry tried to process this. And how far along are we? Early stages still, Apollon smiled. Despite your remarkable magical compatibility, true bonding takes time and trust. You are young, Harry, and so is Fleur. There is no rush. That's good, Harry said with relief. Because all of this is still overwhelming. Apollon suggested. Of course it is. You were thrust into extraordinary circumstances without preparation or choice. That you've adapted so well speaks to your character. Harry felt himself flush at the unexpected praise. I'm just doing my best. Indeed. Apollon set down her cup and fixed him with a more serious look. Now, about the Yule Ball. You understand that by escorting a Veela publicly, you make a statement in our society? What kind of statement? That you recognize her heritage without fear or prejudice, Apollon explained. Many wizards desire Veela but hide their relationships, ashamed of the creature association. By attending openly, you challenge those prejudices. Harry hadn't considered this dimension. I'm not ashamed of Fleur or her heritage, he said firmly. If anything, I think her Veela abilities are brilliant. Apollon's approval was evident. Then you will do fine, Harry Potter. Just remember that pride goes both ways. Fleur must also acknowledge you as an equal, not merely a convenient partner. I think we've got that part covered, Harry said wryly. She doesn't hesitate to tell me when I'm being thick. Apollon laughed, a sound remarkably like her daughter's. Yes, directness is a Delacour trait, Veela or not. She reached into her bag and withdrew a small package. A gift, for the ball. Harry accepted it hesitantly. You didn't need to, it is traditional, Apollon insisted. Open it. Inside was a set of dress robes made from a material Harry had never seen before, darkest black that seemed to shimmer with subtle blue highlights when it moved. Veela crafted formal wear, Apollon explained. Woven with protective enchantments and suitable enhancements for your particular situation. It's brilliant, Harry said honestly, feeling the impossibly light fabric. Thank you. The enchantments will help stabilize your magic during heightened emotions, Apollon added. Dancing often triggers magical resonance between bond mates. Harry packed the robes carefully. I appreciate your help, Mrs. Delacour. With everything. Apollon, please, she corrected gently. And you are welcome, Harry. Whatever comes of this bond, you have handled it with maturity and respect. My daughter is fortunate in her potential mate. As Harry walked back to the castle, he felt both reassured and slightly overwhelmed. Whatever happened at the Yule Ball, at least he'd have proper robes, and perhaps a better understanding of the magic connecting him to Fleur. The evening of the Yule Ball arrived with a flurry of excitement and nervous energy throughout the castle. Harry dressed carefully in the Veela-crafted robes, which fit perfectly despite never being measured for them. The material adjusted subtly to his movements, always falling in perfect lines. Blimey, Ron said when Harry emerged from the bathroom. Those aren't the robes we bought in Diagon Alley. Gift from Fleur's mother, Harry explained, straightening the collar. Must be serious then, Ron teased, struggling with his own frilly robes. Meeting the parents, special gifts. It's complicated, Harry said for what felt like the 100th time. They made their way to the entrance hall, where champions were gathering with their partners. Cedric stood with Cho Chang, looking happy if slightly nervous. Crumb waited stoically near the stairs, occasionally glancing up expectantly. Then Fleur appeared at the top of the marble staircase, and Harry forgot everyone else existed. She wore robes of silver-gray silk that seemed to float around her, shimmering like moonlight on water. Her hair was partially up in an intricate arrangement, with the rest flowing down her back in a silvery cascade. The pendant she wore, identical to Harry's, gleamed at her throat. As she descended, their eyes met, and Harry felt that familiar magical hum intensify. The pendant warmed against his skin. You look amazing, he said when she reached him, suddenly aware of how inadequate those words were. As do you, Fleur replied, her eyes approving his attire. Mother chose well. Before they could say more, McGonagall called the champions to order, instructing them to line up for the entrance procession. As Harry took Fleur's arm, he became acutely aware of the stares and whispers around them. Ignore them, Fleur murmured. Tonight is for us. The great hall had been transformed into a winter wonderland, with ice sculptures that never melted, thousands of fairy lights, and enchanted snow falling from the ceiling that vanished before reaching the tables. The champions processed to the head table amid applause and curious murmurs. Dinner passed pleasantly enough, though Harry noted the ministers from both Britain and France watching them closely from the head table. Rita Skeeter lurked nearby, her quick quotes quill poised hopefully. "She's waiting for us to sprout wings or breathe fire," Fleur observed dryly. "Don't give her ideas," Harry replied. "She might report it anyway." After the meal came the opening dance. As they took the floor with the other champions, Harry was grateful for the practice sessions Fleur had insisted on. The Veela-crafted robes seemed to enhance his natural movements, making him more graceful than he'd ever been. As they moved together, Harry felt their magic responding, not dramatically, but in subtle ways. The air around them warmed slightly. The fairy lights nearest them burned a touch brighter. And between them, that connection hummed like a perfectly tuned instrument. "It's responding to the music," Fleur whispered, clearly sensing the same thing. "The rhythm is synchronizing our magic." Other couples joined the dance, and soon the floor was crowded. As they continued dancing, Harry noticed something peculiar. People gave them slightly more space than other couples, as if unconsciously responding to the magical field around them. "Is this what it's like for you all the time?" he asked. "People keeping a respectful distance?" Fleur shook her head. "Usually it's the opposite, they crowd closer, drawn by the allure. This is different. Our combined magic is creating a natural boundary." After several dances, they took a break, finding a table near one of the enchanted ice gardens. Ron joined them, looking thoroughly disgruntled after his attempt at dancing with Padma Patil. "Having fun?" Harry asked, already knowing the answer. "Brilliant," Ron muttered. "Nothing like watching your best mate dance perfectly while you step on toes." "The robes help," Harry admitted, gesturing to his Veela-crafted attire. Ron sighed. "Everything magical always comes easy to you, doesn't it? Even dancing." Before Harry could respond, Hermione approached, flushed and smiling from dancing with Crumb. "It's wonderful, isn't it?" she beamed. "Victor's gone to get drinks." Ron made a noncommittal grunt. Fleur, sensing tension, graciously engaged Hermione in conversation about her periwinkle blue robes while Harry attempted to improve Ron's mood. "You could try actually dancing with Padma instead of glaring at everyone," he suggested quietly. "Easy for you to say," Ron grumbled. "You've got a Veela who actually wants to be here with you." Harry was saved from responding by the arrival of Fleur Delacour, elegant in robes of deep midnight blue. "It is time for our cultural presentation," she informed them. "Are you prepared?" Fleur nodded, rising gracefully. "We've practiced, Mother." Harry followed her lead. They had indeed rehearsed a simple demonstration of Veela-influenced magic, nothing too dramatic, just enough to satisfy the ministry's desire for controlled cultural exchange. A space cleared in the center of the dance floor as Apollon made a brief introduction explaining Veela heritage and magical traditions. Then Fleur stepped forward, Harry beside her. They began with a traditional Veela greeting, a synchronized movement where their magic visibly acknowledged each other in brief, controlled flares of silver blue light. Then came a short magical dance where Fleur demonstrated subtle Veela fire magic, creating delicate patterns of flame that never burned, while Harry's magic responded with complementary forms. The audience watched in fascination as their magic interacted in beautiful, harmless displays. Even Minister Fudge seemed impressed rather than concerned. They concluded with a formal bow, their pendants briefly glowing in unison before the light faded. Applause broke out, and the regular music resumed. "Well done," Apollon squeezed Fleur's shoulder approvingly. "Perfectly controlled." As they moved away from the dance floor, Harry noticed a commotion near the entrance. A woman in severe black robes had arrived, surrounded by several official-looking wizards. Her toad-like face wore an expression of distaste as she surveyed the hall. Who's that? Harry asked Fleur, nodding toward the newcomers. Fleur's expression darkened. Dolores Umbridge. Senior Undersecretary to your minister. And notorious for anti-creature legislation. What's she doing here? Nothing good, Fleur murmured. Stay close. Sure enough, after a brief conversation with Fudge, Umbridge began making her way toward them, her artificially sweet smile at odds with the coldness in her eyes. Miss Delacour, Mr. Potter, she greeted in a girlish voice that made Harry's skin crawl. What an interesting display. Thank you, Madam Umbridge, Fleur replied with perfect politeness, though Harry felt her tension. I must say, Umbridge continued, we at the Ministry have been quite concerned about these foreign magical influences at a British school event. She emphasized foreign while looking pointedly at Fleur. The tournament is international by design, Harry pointed out. Cultural exchange is part of the purpose. Cultural exchange, yes, Umbridge smiled wider, revealing pointed teeth. But magical influence is another matter entirely. Particularly when it involves a minor. There has been no improper influence, Apollon stated firmly, joining the conversation. The magical demonstration was approved by both ministries. The demonstration, perhaps, Umbridge conceded. But there are rumors of a deeper connection, a magical bond forming without proper oversight or consent procedures. Consent procedures? Harry repeated incredulously. Of course, Mr. Potter, Umbridge's voice dripped with false concern. The Ministry has strict protocols regarding magical bindings involving minors, especially with non-human entities. Fleur stiffened beside him. Harry felt a surge of protective anger. Fleur is a witch, he said coldly. Her Veela heritage doesn't make her non-human. Such loyalty, Umbridge simpered. One wonders if it's genuine or magically induced. Before Harry could respond, Dumbledore materialized beside them, eyes twinkling but notably lacking their usual warmth. Dolores, he greeted cordially. I wasn't aware you would be joining us tonight. Last-minute decision, Dumbledore, she replied. The minister felt additional ministry representation would be appropriate, given the international nature of the event. Indeed. And I see you've met our champions, Dumbledore nodded toward Harry and Fleur. Performing admirably in the tournament thus far. Yes, though some might question whether certain magical advantages are being properly regulated. All champions bring their unique magical heritage to the tournament, Dumbledore said mildly. Miss Delacour's Veela abilities are no different from Mr. Crumb's natural affinity for elemental transfiguration, or Mr. Potter's remarkable defensive magic. Umbridge's smile tightened. Nevertheless, the Ministry will be introducing new oversight measures for the remaining tasks. For everyone's safety, of course. With that ominous statement, she turned and rejoined Fudge, leaving an uncomfortable silence in her wake. Well, Dumbledore sighed, it appears the political dimension of this tournament continues to evolve. She's planning something, Apollon said quietly. That woman has been trying to restrict Veela rights for years. What kind of oversight measures can she implement? Harry asked worriedly. Nothing without tournament committee approval, Dumbledore assured him. But I suggest you both proceed with caution. Dolores Umbridge has considerable influence with the current administration. The mood subdued, they rejoined the ball. Though they continued dancing and conversing with friends, the enjoyment had dimmed somewhat. Harry noticed Ministry officials watching them more closely for the remainder of the evening. As the ball wound down near midnight, Harry and Fleur slipped outside for a moment of peace in the rose garden. Enchanted fairy lights illuminated the paths, and warming charms kept the winter chill at bay. I'm sorry about Umbridge, Harry said once they were alone. It is not your fault, Fleur replied, gazing up at the stars. Her kind exists in every ministry, afraid of what they don't understand, seeking to control through legislation what they cannot comprehend through intellect. Still, it ruined the evening. Not entirely, Fleur turned to face him. I enjoyed dancing with you. And our demonstration was perfect. Harry smiled. We do work well together. We do, Fleur agreed softly. Perhaps better than either ministry would prefer. Will her interference affect the second task? Possibly. But we'll be prepared. Fleur's expression turned determined. We should intensify our training. The lake in February will be challenging enough without political complications. Harry nodded. Back to the room of requirement tomorrow? Actually, Fleur hesitated. My mother suggested something different. There's a Veela meditation technique that might help us better understand our magical connection. Meditation? Harry raised an eyebrow skeptically. Not the sitting still for hours kind, Fleur assured him. It's more, interactive. Guided magical resonance. Sounds intense. It is, Fleur admitted. But if Umbridge is planning restrictions, we should learn as much as we can while we're still permitted to practice together. The seriousness of their situation settled over Harry. What had begun as an unexpected magical curiosity was becoming a political battlefield, with them at the center. Whatever it takes, he agreed. We'll face this together. Fleur's smile returned, small but genuine. Together, she echoed, reaching for his hand. As their fingers intertwined, their magic hummed in quiet harmony, seemingly unconcerned with ministry regulations or political machinations. Whatever came next, Harry thought, this connection between them felt increasingly right, and worth protecting. January brought freezing temperatures, heavy snow, and increased scrutiny from both ministries. Following Umbridge's appearance at the Yule Ball, new, observational protocols had been implemented for the champions, including random magical testing and mandated reports on training activities. It's ridiculous, Harry complained as they trudged through snow toward the lake for practice. They're not requiring these reports from Cedric or Crumb. Because neither of them has Veela heritage, Fleur replied grimly. Umbridge is targeting me specifically, and you by association. They reached their usual practice spot, a secluded cove shielded from view by a stand of willows. Hermione was already there, maintaining a small bluebell flame for warmth. I've been researching ministry regulations on magical bonds, she reported as they approached. They're using a legal loophole from the 1782 Creature Registration Act, claiming that spontaneous magic between a wizard and a partial human requires special oversight. Partial human? Fleur repeated, outraged. I am a witch with Veela heritage, not some hybrid creature. I know it's offensive, Hermione said apologetically. I'm just quoting the legal terminology they're using. Harry kicked at the snow in frustration. So what can we do? Keep training while following their rules, Hermione advised pragmatically. File the reports, attend the testing sessions, but don't give them any reason to impose further restrictions. And continue our private research, Fleur added meaningfully. The private research Fleur referred to was the Veela meditation practice her mother had taught them before returning to France. Unlike conventional meditation, this technique involved direct magical interaction in a controlled environment, allowing them to explore their connection safely. They discovered several interesting properties of their bond through these sessions. Their magical cores resonated at complementary frequencies, Fleur's quick and flickering like flame, Harry's more steady and resilient like wind. When synchronized, these patterns created unique magical effects, particularly related to elemental manipulation. More surprisingly, they developed a rudimentary form of emotional awareness, not mind reading, but a general sense of each other's strong feelings, particularly when in close proximity. This had proven useful during their underwater training, allowing them to communicate basic intentions without speech. Let's focus on the task at hand, Harry suggested, removing his outer cloak. The second task is 3 weeks away. They'd established a training routine for the lake, warming charms followed by bubblehead charms, then progressively longer submersion periods. Today, they aimed for 30 minutes underwater, half the duration they'd need for the actual task. Ready? Fleur asked, casting her warming charm first. Harry nodded, following suit. When both were sufficiently protected from the cold, they cast their bubblehead charms and waded into the frigid lake. Underwater, their connection manifested differently than on land. The water between them seemed to vibrate with subtle currents, creating paths of lesser resistance. They'd learned to use these currents to conserve energy while swimming, though controlling them required concentration. They practiced various scenarios, navigating obstacles, defending against potential underwater threats, and rescue techniques for retrieving whatever precious items would be taken from them. Hermione observed from shore, taking notes and timing their submersion. 20 minutes into the session, Harry noticed something unusual, a ripple in their magical field that he hadn't felt before. He gestured to Fleur, who had sensed it too. They turned slowly in the water, trying to locate the source. Movement caught Harry's eye, a flash of silver scales and flowing green hair. Mere people, watching them from a distance. Harry pointed, and Fleur nodded in recognition. The merfolk made no move to approach, simply observing with curious expressions. After a moment, one detached from the group and swam slightly closer, a female with an elaborate shell necklace that suggested authority. Fleur, to Harry's surprise, made a series of graceful gestures with her hands. The mermaid responded with similar movements, though her expression remained wary. After this brief exchange, the merfolk retreated into deeper water, disappearing from view. When they surfaced later, Harry immediately questioned Fleur. "You can communicate with mere people?" "Not exactly," Fleur explained as they dried themselves with warming charms. "Veela and merfolk have ancient connections, both being elemental magical beings. We share some basic gestural communication." "What did you say to her?" Hermione asked eagerly. "I acknowledged their territory and explained our presence," Fleur said. She responded with, "I believe it translates roughly to, observed and noted." They were studying our magic, Harry realized. "The way it affects the water." Fleur nodded. "The merfolk are likely part of the task. They're serving as guardians or guides." "This is fascinating," Hermione breathed. "The books mention historical connections between Veela and mere people, but details are scarce. Something about shared ancestry in ancient elemental beings." "My grandmother spoke of it," Fleur confirmed. Before the Great Division of magical beings, elemental creatures shared common magic. When separation occurred, some taking to water, others to air and fire, a memory of connection remained. "Could this help during the task?" Harry asked practically. "Perhaps," Fleur looked thoughtful. "Not as allies, mere people are neutral guardians, but they might be less hostile toward us than other competitors." They packed up their supplies, making notes for their mandatory ministry report while carefully omitting the merfolk encounter and their private meditation practices. Some discoveries, they'd agreed, were best kept between themselves. As January progressed, their preparation intensified. They could now maintain bubblehead charms for the full hour and had developed efficient swimming techniques utilizing their unique magical currents. Harry had also insisted on contingency plans, carrying gillyweed as backup and learning basic non-verbal spells for underwater communication. Their bond continued to strengthen through regular meditation sessions, though they maintained careful control during ministry testing. Umbridge herself attended one such test, watching with poorly concealed displeasure as they demonstrated only the most basic magical resonance. "She's hoping we'll fail," Harry observed afterward. "Give her an excuse for more restrictions." "Then we must disappoint her," Fleur replied with determination. "Show only what is necessary, keep the rest private." A week before the second task, Fleur Delacour sent a carefully worded letter that both alarmed and intrigued them. "My dear Fleur and Harry, recent developments in the ministry suggest increasing concern about your participation in the upcoming task. While I cannot provide specifics, be aware that certain parties seek to utilize the task as an opportunity to document problematic magical manifestations. On an unrelated note, I've enclosed some historical research on ancient Veela water rituals. The protection ceremony on page 17 might prove academically interesting, though such old magic is purely theoretical in modern times. Wishing you both success in your studies. Upon the historical research, turned out to be detailed instructions for a protective ritual designed to shield Veela magic from external detection or interference, originally created during periods of persecution when Veela were hunted for their magical abilities. Your mother is brilliant, Harry said after they'd studied the material. She's giving us a way to shield our connection from ministry monitoring. The ritual requires preparation, Fleur noted, reviewing the instructions. And it must be performed at the boundary between elements, where water meets air or land. The lakeshore, the night before the task, Harry suggested. But will it work for both of us? It's designed for Veela. With our connection, it should extend to you, Fleur explained. The ritual recognizes magical signatures that resonate with Veela energy, which yours now does. They spent their final practice sessions preparing the ritual components while continuing their underwater training. Hermione helped gather the required materials, specific herbs, pure beeswax candles, and lake water collected under moonlight. The night before the second task, they met at their secluded cove. Hermione stood guard nearby, keeping watch for prefects or ministry officials, while Harry and Fleur prepared the ritual space at the water's edge. Fleur drew symbols in the sand using a silver knife, creating a circle divided by flowing lines representing the elements. She placed candles at specific points and sprinkled the collected herbs in patterns Harry couldn't quite follow. The ritual is simple but powerful, she explained quietly. We stand within the circle, 1 foot in water, 1 on land, and recite the invocation together. Our magic will naturally harmonize during the process. Will there be visible effects? Harry asked nervously. Something someone might notice from a distance. Nothing dramatic, Fleur assured him. A subtle glow perhaps, easily mistaken for moonlight on water. When everything was prepared, they took their positions at the center of the circle, standing side by side with their right feet in the lake water and left feet on the shore. Their pendants, worn continuously since the first task, seemed to pulse gently in the darkness. Fleur began the incantation in ancient Veela language, her voice taking on a musical quality Harry had never heard before. He joined in for the parts she had taught him, feeling his magic stir in response to the words. As they spoke the final phrase together, Harry felt the water around his foot warm suddenly. The circle of symbols glowed silver blue for a heartbeat, then the light seemed to flow inward, spiraling up their bodies before settling like an invisible shroud around them both. It is done, Fleur whispered. The veil is in place. Harry didn't feel noticeably different, but he trusted her expertise. How will we know if it works? Our magic will function normally, but external detection spells will see only standard magical patterns, Fleur explained. The unique resonance of our connection will be hidden from magical monitoring. They carefully erased all evidence of the ritual before returning to the castle, parting ways with a shared look of determination. Whatever challenges the second task brought, they would face them with their full abilities, ministry oversight be damned. The morning of the second task dawned cold and grey. Harry barely slept, anxiety about the task combined with concern for Ron and Hermione, neither of whom had returned to Gryffindor Tower the previous night. Something precious, he muttered to himself as he dressed in the swimming clothes they'd prepared. They've taken Ron or Hermione. When he reached the lake, the other champions were already gathering. Cedric looked confident, Crumb stoic as usual. But Fleur appeared agitated, scanning the crowd with worried eyes. Gabrielle is missing, she said immediately when Harry approached. My sister, she did not return to the carriage last night. Harry's suspicion was confirmed. Ron and Hermione are missing too. They've taken people, not objects. Fleur paled. Gabrielle is only 8. She cannot swim well, and the lake in February. They'll be safe, Harry assured her, though his own worry for his friends gnawed at him. Dumbledore wouldn't put them in real danger. Around them, ministry officials were setting up what appeared to be magical monitoring equipment, crystalline devices on tall stands positioned to overlook the lake. Harry noticed Umbridge directing their placement with obvious satisfaction. The detection ritual worked, Fleur murmured, following his gaze. "I can feel the monitoring spells washing over us but finding nothing unusual." Bagman gathered the champions, explaining the task officially, though all of them had clearly figured it out already. They would have 1 hour to retrieve their treasures from the merpeople's village. As they took positions along the shore, Harry and Fleur exchanged one final look. Their plan was clear: operate independently as required, but stay alert for any situation where their combined abilities might be needed. At Bagman's whistle, they plunged into the freezing water. Harry cast his bubblehead charm perfectly, then oriented himself toward the center of the lake where the mervillage likely lay. Around him, the other champions were employing their strategies, Cedric also using the bubblehead, Crumb partially transfiguring into a shark, and Fleur swimming gracefully with her own bubble of air. The protective ritual seemed to be working. Though Harry could still sense Fleur's magical signature nearby, the monitoring crystals on shore showed no reaction to their proximity. As he swam deeper, Harry encountered the expected lake obstacles: grindylows lurking in weed forests, sudden cold patches that tried to penetrate his warming charms, disorienting currents that pushed him off course. He navigated carefully, conserving energy for the return journey. About 20 minutes in, he felt a disturbance in the water, a pulse of alarm through their connection. Fleur was in trouble. Harry hesitated only briefly before altering his course toward the distress signal. Tournament rules be damned, he wouldn't ignore a genuine emergency. He found her surrounded by a swarm of grindylows, their long fingers tangled in her hair and clothes, trying to drag her down. Her bubblehead charm was intact, but she was struggling to aim her wand effectively with her arms partially restrained. Harry didn't hesitate. He cast a powerful repulsion charm that sent the nearest grindylows tumbling through the water. The moment his spell connected, their magical resonance activated, the repulsion effect amplified and spreading in a perfect circle around Fleur, clearing a path for her escape. She recovered quickly, casting her own defensive spell to keep the creatures at bay. Their eyes met through their respective air bubbles, a silent acknowledgement passing between them before they separated again, continuing toward their destinations independently as the rules required. The mervillage appeared through the murky water, stone dwellings covered in algae, merpeople with grayish skin and wild hair watching him with yellow eyes. In the village square, 4 figures were bound to a giant statue: Ron, Hermione, Cho Chang, and a tiny silver-haired girl who could only be Gabrielle. Harry reached Ron first, using a cutting charm to sever his bindings. As he worked, he noticed Cedric arriving for Cho. There was no sign of Crumb or Fleur yet. A mermaid approached, trident raised warningly. "Take your own hostage," she said in a garbled underwater speech. "Leave the others." Harry pointed to Gabrielle, then made a questioning gesture about Fleur. The mermaid seemed to understand. The Veela witch encountered difficulty. "You take only your hostage." Harry hesitated. Tournament rules said to retrieve only his own hostage, but if Fleur couldn't reach Gabrielle. He glanced at Ron, then back at the small girl tied to the statue, her silver hair floating around her like a halo. He made his decision. Cutting Ron free, he gestured for his friend to wait. Then he approached Gabrielle. The merpeople closed ranks, tridents pointed menacingly. "Only one," the leader insisted. Harry raised his wand, not aggressively but firmly. To his surprise, the mermaid with the shell necklace he'd seen during training appeared, gesturing for the others to stand aside. She studied Harry for a long moment, then made the same gesture Fleur had used during their encounter, acknowledgement of connection. She then pointed to both Ron and Gabrielle, nodding once before swimming away. Permission granted, Harry quickly freed Gabrielle. The little girl remained unconscious, enchanted like the other hostages. Supporting both her and Ron would be challenging for the ascent. As if in answer to his concern, he felt Fleur's magical signature approaching rapidly. She appeared moments later, bleeding slightly from scratches on her arms but swimming strongly. Relief flooded her face when she saw Gabrielle safe with Harry. She took her sister from him with a grateful nod, and they began the ascent together, each with their respective hostage. Their journey back was aided by that same water resistance phenomenon they'd practiced, the water seeming to part more easily before them, reducing drag and conserving energy. It wasn't obvious enough to trigger the monitoring devices, but it gave them a subtle advantage. They breached the surface almost simultaneously, to thunderous applause from the crowd. Ron and Gabrielle awoke immediately, sputtering and disoriented. "Harry?" Ron coughed. "What's happening?" "Tell you later," Harry managed, helping him toward shore. Beside them, Fleur was supporting a confused Gabrielle, speaking rapid French to reassure her. As they reached shallow water, Fleur turned to Harry, her expression intense. "You saved her when I couldn't reach her," she said simply. "Couldn't leave her down there," Harry replied, shivering as the February air hit his wet clothes. Fleur's response was immediate and unexpected. She kissed him on each cheek, then quickly on the lips. "Thank you," she whispered. The moment their lips touched, a brief but unmistakable flare of silver-blue light surrounded them. It lasted only a heartbeat, but in that moment, Harry felt their connection surge to a new intensity, emotions flowing freely between them, gratitude and relief and something deeper that neither was ready to name. Unfortunately, the flare had been visible to everyone on shore, including the ministry officials with their monitoring equipment, which was now emitting high-pitched alarms and flashing red warnings. "Containment breach," someone shouted. "Magical anomaly detected." Harry and Fleur were separated immediately upon reaching shore, ministry workers creating a cordon between them as medical staff checked them over. Across the crowd, Harry could see Umbridge's satisfied expression as she conferred with other officials, occasionally pointing toward them. Dumbledore and Madame Maxime intervened before the situation escalated further, insisting that the champions receive proper care before any investigation. Harry was bundled in warm blankets and given pepper-up potion, as was Fleur several meters away. Despite the separation, Harry could still feel Fleur's presence more clearly than ever, her concern, her frustration, and her determination all flowing to him through their strengthened bond. The judges convened to award points while ministry officials continued examining their monitoring data. Harry found himself approached by Dumbledore, whose expression was carefully neutral. "An impressive performance, Harry," the headmaster said quietly. Though perhaps with unexpected magical manifestations. The protection wore off, Harry replied just as quietly. "When we touched on the surface." "Indeed." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. A spontaneous expression of genuine gratitude can often overcome even the most carefully constructed magical protections. Before they could continue, Percy Weasley approached, looking officious and concerned. "Professor Dumbledore, Mr. Potter is required to attend a ministry inquiry regarding the magical discharge incident. Immediately." "I believe champions are entitled to medical recovery time after tasks," Dumbledore countered smoothly. "This is a matter of magical security," Percy insisted. "I'll go," Harry decided, seeing Fleur already being escorted toward the castle by similar officials. Better to face this now. The inquiry took place in McGonagall's office, with representatives from both ministries present. Harry and Fleur sat on opposite sides of the room, still in their damp clothes despite warming charms. Umbridge led the questioning, her saccharine voice at odds with her accusatory words. "Experimental magic performed during an official tournament task," she began, pacing between them. "Potentially endangering other competitors and violating the clear prohibition against magical cooperation between champions." "There was no cooperation during the task," Fleur stated firmly. "We retrieved our respective hostages independently. Yet our monitoring equipment detected multiple magical anomalies," Umbridge countered. "First underwater, near the Grindylow colony, and then a significant discharge upon surfacing." "I was attacked by Grindylows," Fleur explained. "Any magical discharge would have been defensive, not cooperative." "And the incident upon surfacing?" Umbridge pressed. Harry spoke up. "I rescued Fleur's sister when she couldn't reach her. She was thanking me. With a magical discharge powerful enough to trigger security protocols." Umbridge's smile was predatory. This supports our concerns about unregulated Veela influence on a minor wizard. It was spontaneous, not deliberate, Fleur argued. Emotional magic triggered by concern for my sister. The debate continued for nearly an hour, with Madame Maxime and McGonagall occasionally intervening to temper Umbridge's more outrageous claims. Eventually, a temporary resolution was reached. Harry and Fleur would undergo a more comprehensive magical evaluation, and until those results were analyzed, they would be prohibited from practicing magic together outside of supervised sessions. "This is absurd," Fleur fumed as they finally left the office. They found exactly what they wanted, an excuse for greater restrictions. "At least they can't stop us competing," Harry pointed out. "And we've already learned what we needed from our practice sessions." They walked in silence for a moment, both aware of the enhanced connection between them. Harry could sense Fleur's emotions more clearly now, her anger at the ministry overlaid with deeper concerns for her sister and frustration at being treated like a dangerous creature rather than a champion. "Something's changed," Harry said quietly. "With the bond. Since I kissed you," Fleur finished, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. "Yes. The emotional aspect has deepened." "Is that normal?" Harry asked. "After the books talked about stages of bonding. This is the second stage," Fleur confirmed. Emotional resonance. It typically requires both magical proximity and significant personal connection. "So gratitude for saving your sister counts as significant personal connection?" "That, and everything leading to it," Fleur said softly. "The training, the Yule Ball, our shared challenges. The kiss was merely the catalyst." They reached a junction where their paths would diverge, Harry to Gryffindor Tower, Fleur to the Beauxbatons carriage. "What happens now?" Harry asked. "With the bond, I mean. We learn to manage the emotional connection," Fleur replied. "It's not mind reading, just general awareness of strong feelings. And we prepare for whatever the final task brings." "And the ministry?" Fleur's expression hardened. "We comply with their restrictions publicly while finding ways to maintain our connection privately. They cannot monitor thoughts or emotions." "Meeting of minds instead of magic," Harry nodded. "I like it." As they parted ways, Harry felt Fleur's emotions shift from determination to something warmer, directed specifically at him. Without words, he returned the sentiment, and felt her acknowledgement through their connection. Whatever came next, this bond between them was becoming something neither ministry could fully regulate or understand, something uniquely theirs, built on more than just ancient magic or tournament circumstances. For the first time since his name emerged from the Goblet of Fire, Harry felt genuinely grateful for the tournament that had brought Fleur Delacour into his life. Chapter 3, Bound by Choice, Magical Separation Order. Harry stared at the official ministry parchment McGonagall had just handed him. "They can't be serious." McGonagall's lips formed a thin, disapproving line. "I'm afraid Minister Fudge and Madame Umbridge are quite serious, Potter. This order restricts you and Miss Delacour from being within 20 feet of each other outside of mandatory tournament functions for the next 30 days. "That's ridiculous." Harry's fist clenched, crumpling the parchment's edge. "We haven't done anything wrong." "I agree," McGonagall said, surprising him. "However, until Dumbledore can challenge this through proper channels, I must insist you comply. The penalties for violation include possible expulsion and disqualification from the tournament." Harry forced himself to take a deep breath. "What about the final task? We've still got 2 months of preparation. The order allows for supervised training sessions with approved ministry personnel present." McGonagall's expression suggested what she thought of that arrangement. "Professor Dumbledore is working to modify these terms." Harry left her office fuming, the parchment stuffed unceremoniously into his pocket. He immediately reached out through the bond, sending his frustration toward Fleur. Her response came quickly, a matching anger tinged with determination. At least their emotional connection remained beyond ministry interference. Hermione was waiting in the common room, anxiously pacing. What happened? We're being treated like criminals. Harry thrust the order toward her. 20 feet apart at all times, supervised training only. Hermione scanned the document quickly. This is outrageous. It cites the Protection of Wizarding Youth Act, but that law was designed to prevent dark wizards from establishing control bonds with minors, not to restrict natural magical connections. Umbridge doesn't care about the law's intent. Harry dropped into an armchair. She's using whatever tools she can to keep us apart. There might be a loophole, Hermione said thoughtfully. The restriction specifies physical proximity, but says nothing about other forms of communication. Like what? We can't exactly send owls every 5 minutes. No, but... Hermione hesitated. How strong is your emotional connection now? Since the second task. Harry considered this. Strong enough to sense general feelings, sometimes specific ones if they're intense. Distance seems to weaken it slightly, but it's still there. That's it then, Hermione brightened. You practice strengthening the emotional aspect while physically separated. The Ministry can't monitor or restrict what they can't detect. It was brilliant in its simplicity. Over the next week, Harry and Fleur developed a system, deliberate emotional projections at specific times, creating a rudimentary form of communication that grew more nuanced with practice. Happiness meant all was well, anger indicated interference, concern suggested caution was needed, and a particular warm sensation they discovered meant, thinking of you. Their supervised training sessions were exercises in frustration. Ministry officials, including Percy Weasley, watched their every move, forbidding any spell combinations or simultaneous casting. They practiced tournament skills separately, maintaining a professional distance while secretly communicating through their emotional connection. Mr. Potter, please maintain proper distance, Percy admonished during one such session, measuring the space between them with a magical tape measure. 19 feet is insufficient. Harry reluctantly stepped back, feeling Fleur's amusement ripple through their bond. He sent back a flicker of mischievous defiance, making her suppress a smile. Miss Delacour, your shield charm practice is on the east side today, Percy continued officiously. Mr. Potter will work on obstacle navigation to the west. They complied outwardly while maintaining their hidden communication, developing a skill neither ministry suspected, the ability to coordinate their magic at a distance, drawing on each other's strengths without physical proximity. 2 weeks into their separation, an unexpected development occurred. Gabrielle Delacour arrived at Hogwarts with a small delegation of Veela elders, officially to observe tournament preparations, but clearly with other intentions. Harry first learned of this when Dumbledore summoned him to his office. "Ah, Harry," the headmaster greeted him, eyes twinkling. "We have some distinguished guests who have requested to meet with you." Seated around Dumbledore's office were 3 elderly Veela women of remarkable beauty and dignity, Madame Maxime, and a beaming Gabrielle. Harry Potter. Gabrielle launched herself at him the moment he entered, hugging him tightly. "Thank you again for saving me from the lake." "Easy, Gabrielle," chided the eldest Veela, her silver hair elaborately braided with gold threads. "Remember your manners." Gabrielle stepped back but remained close to Harry, smiling up at him. "Grandmere wishes to meet you properly." The elderly Veela rose gracefully. "I am Celestine Delacour, matriarch of the Delacour clan and keeper of the ancient ways. We have come to formally acknowledge the bond between you and my granddaughter." Harry glanced uncertainly at Dumbledore, who nodded encouragingly. "It's nice to meet you, Madame Delacour," Harry said politely. "But I'm afraid the Ministry has ordered Fleur and me to keep our distance." "The British Ministry has no authority over Veela customs," Celestine stated firmly. "We recognize a developing bond of significant magical importance, one that saved my youngest granddaughter's life. Such matters supersede petty governmental restrictions." "Nevertheless," Dumbledore interjected gently, "we must proceed with some discretion. The delegation has been granted diplomatic status, allowing certain exceptions to the separation order for cultural exchanges of an educational nature." Harry translated this diplomatic speak, "they'd found a loophole." The traditional acknowledgement ceremony requires both bondmates, Celestine continued. Arrangements have been made for tomorrow evening. Until then, young Gabrielle will remain with you as a cultural ambassador. With me? Harry repeated, surprised. To learn more about British wizarding education, Madame Maxime explained with a conspiratorial wink. All properly documented and approved. Harry suddenly understood, Gabrielle would serve as a go-between, allowing indirect communication with Fleur that even the ministry couldn't protest. I'd be happy to show Gabrielle around, he agreed quickly. After the meeting concluded, Gabrielle skipped alongside Harry as they left Dumbledore's office. The moment they were alone in the corridor, she dropped her childish demeanor slightly. Fleur says the ministry people are stupid, she announced confidently. She misses you very much. Harry couldn't help smiling. I miss her too. How is she? Angry. And worried about the final task. Gabrielle lowered her voice. Grandmere says your bond is special. Different from normal Veela bonds. Different how? Most Veela bonds happen between a Veela and a wizard she chooses, Gabrielle explained with surprising maturity. But yours happened naturally, without choice. Grandmere says that means it's more authentic? Harry suggested. Yes. That's the word Fleur used too. Gabrielle beamed. The elders want to test it tomorrow. Test it? How? Gabrielle shrugged. Old Veela magic. They need to see if it's a real destined bond or just a magical accident. That sounded both intriguing and mildly terrifying. And what happens if it's real? Then they help protect it, Gabrielle said simply. Veela protect their own, and a true bondmate becomes family. The thought of having a real family, people who would stand by him, protect him, created a warm feeling that must have traveled through the bond, because Harry suddenly felt Fleur's curious response. You're doing it now. Gabrielle observed, fascinated. Fleur said you can send feelings to each other. What did you send? Just, happiness, Harry said, slightly embarrassed. About the idea of family. Gabrielle's expression softened. Fleur told me you don't have parents. That's sad. But now you'll have us. I always wanted a big brother. Her simple acceptance touched Harry deeply. I always wanted a little sister, he admitted. Though one less prone to getting tied up at the bottom of lakes. Gabrielle giggled, then grew serious again. Grandmere says the ministry is afraid of your bond because they don't understand it. That's why tomorrow is important. To prove it's not dangerous. To prove it's a choice, Gabrielle corrected. That magic didn't force you together, it just showed what was possible. The cultural exchange was scheduled for sunset the following day in a secluded clearing near the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Harry arrived escorted by Professor McGonagall, who had volunteered as Hogwarts' official representative. I want you to know, Potter, she said as they walked, that Professor Dumbledore and I find these ministry restrictions utterly ridiculous. What exists between you and Miss Delacour is rare and valuable, not something to be feared or controlled. Thank you, Professor, Harry said, genuinely touched by her support. The clearing had been transformed with floating silver lanterns and a circle of white stones. The three Veela elders stood at its center, Celestine in ceremonial robes of shimmering blue-white. Madame Maxime and Gabrielle waited nearby, along with a ministry observer, thankfully not Umbridge, but a nervous-looking junior official who kept consulting a thick rulebook. Fleur entered from the opposite side with Dumbledore. The moment Harry saw her, their bond hummed to life, stronger after weeks of limited contact. He felt her joy at seeing him, mirroring his own, and beneath it a steady determination about whatever lay ahead. The ministry permits this cultural demonstration for educational purposes only, the official announced stiffly. No permanent magical exchanges are authorized. Celestine merely smiled. We are conducting a traditional Veela assessment ritual. Nothing will be permanently changed that is not already in motion. The elders directed Harry and Fleur to stand at opposite sides of the stone circle, facing each other across its diameter. The ritual is simple, Celestine explained. We will invoke ancient Veela magic to reveal the true nature of your connection. A forced or artificial bond will shatter under this scrutiny. A genuine bond will reveal its authentic character. And if it's genuine? Harry asked. Then you both face a choice, one of the other elders spoke. All true bonds, even those recognized by ancient magic, must ultimately be accepted by choice, not compulsion. Celestine raised her hands, and the three elders began an eerie, beautiful chant in the ancient Veela language. The stones around them began to glow softly, creating a barrier that the ministry official watched with suspicious eyes. Now, Celestine instructed, step forward until you reach the center, focusing on what you truly feel, not what magic or duty or others' expectations dictate. Harry moved forward slowly, keeping his eyes on Fleur. As they approached the center, the air between them seemed to thicken with magical energy. Their pendants began to glow, responding to the elders' magic. When they met at the center, Celestine spoke again, join hands and close your eyes. The truth will manifest for all to witness. Harry took Fleur's hands, feeling the familiar magical resonance intensify at their touch. He closed his eyes as instructed, focusing on what he truly felt for Fleur, admiration for her strength and intelligence, appreciation for her determination and honesty, the comfort of their growing connection, and something deeper still taking root. The magic around them surged, and Harry heard gasps from the observers. He kept his eyes closed, following instructions, but could feel something extraordinary happening. Their bond wasn't just responding to the elders' magic, it was transforming it, creating something new in the space between them. Open your eyes, Celestine instructed, her voice filled with wonder. Harry looked and gasped. Between him and Fleur floated a complex pattern of light, silver and blue from her side, gold and crimson from his, intertwining in intricate, harmonious patterns. A perfect resonance pattern, one elder whispered. I've never seen such compatibility. And look, the third elder pointed to where the colors met. No dominance, perfect balance. The magic flows equally in both directions. What does it mean? Fleur asked, her eyes fixed on the beautiful display. It means, Celestine said solemnly, that your bond is genuine and extraordinarily potent. Ancient magic recognized what existed as potential between you, compatibility so perfect it transcended usual barriers. The ministry official was frantically making notes. This demonstration exceeds authorized parameters, he objected. The minister must be informed immediately. Inform him, Celestine said dismissively. Tell him what you've witnessed, a bond of remarkable balance and harmony, threatening no one. The magical pattern slowly faded as the elders concluded their ritual. Harry felt a new clarity in the bond, their emotional connection sharper, more defined, yet somehow more comfortable. The ritual reveals truth, but establishes nothing permanent, Celestine explained to the still fretting official. What happens next depends entirely on their choice. Madame Maxime stepped forward. I believe we have satisfied the educational requirements of this cultural exchange. The ministry has witnessed authentic Veela tradition. The official couldn't argue without admitting he was there for surveillance rather than education. Very well. But the separation order remains in effect until the ministry reviews these findings. As they prepared to leave, Celestine pulled Harry aside. A moment, young man. Yes, Madame Delacour. What you share with my granddaughter is precious and rare, she said quietly. But it also makes you both targets for those who fear what they do not understand, or worse, those who understand all too well and seek to exploit its power. You mean Umbridge and the ministry? Harry asked. Them, yes. But others too. Her expression grew grave. Ancient magic draws attention from ancient forces. Be vigilant in the days ahead. Before Harry could ask what she meant, McGonagall signaled it was time to leave. As he walked away, he felt Fleur's questioning concern through their bond. He sent back reassurance, though Celestine's warning lingered uneasily in his mind. The Veela delegation's visit had unexpected consequences. News of the cultural demonstration reached Rita Skeeter, who published a surprisingly balanced article about Veela traditions and their place in European magical society. Public opinion, which had been wary about the foreign creature influence at Hogwarts, began shifting as people learned more about Veela culture beyond the stereotypes. The ministry, however, doubled down on its restrictions. Umbridge issued a new educational decree specifically regulating cross-species magical demonstrations at Hogwarts, requiring triple approval for any such events. "She's absolutely obsessed," Hermione observed, reading the decree posted in the entrance hall. "This is clearly targeted at you and Fleur. At least the separation order's been reduced to 10 feet instead of 20, Harry said, finding the silver lining. Make supervised training sessions less ridiculous. Their training had indeed become more productive since the Veela ritual. Their enhanced emotional connection allowed for better coordination even with ministry officials hovering nearby. They could sense each other's magical intentions more clearly, anticipating moves and complementing strategies without obvious communication. Percy, who still supervised most sessions, remained oblivious to their silent coordination. "Excellent independent progress," he noted approvingly during one practice. "You're both developing strong individual techniques for the maze." If only he knew how thoroughly they were planning to combine those techniques when it mattered. Clues about the final task came gradually. Hagrid, who was growing the maze hedges, let slip that various magical creatures would guard the paths. Moody, during a Dada lesson, emphasized anti-disorientation charms that might come in handy soon. Fleur, through their emotional link, shared information from Madame Maxime about magical obstacles designed to test different skills. But something beyond the tournament was troubling Harry. His scar had been prickling more frequently, and he'd experienced disturbing dreams involving Voldemort, Wormtail, and a mysterious plan centered around the third task. During a particularly vivid dream, he'd heard Voldemort specifically mention the Veela bond as an unexpected power source for some ritual. He'd woken in a cold sweat, immediately reaching for Fleur through their connection to ensure she was safe. The next morning, he shared his concerns with Dumbledore, who looked grave but unsurprised. "I feared something like this might occur," the headmaster admitted. "Powerful magical connections can be sensed by those attuned to such things. If Voldemort is indeed regaining strength, he might well detect such unusual magic." "But what could he want with our bond?" Harry asked. "Ancient magic often holds power beyond ordinary spellwork," Dumbledore explained. "Particularly magic involving rare magical beings and unusual connections. It is possible he seeks to harness such power for his own restoration." "Should I withdraw from the tournament?" Harry suggested reluctantly. "If it's putting Fleur in danger." "I suspect withdrawal would solve nothing," Dumbledore said gently. "The bond exists regardless of the tournament, and Voldemort's agents would simply find another way to reach you. Better to proceed with awareness and preparation." Harry left Dumbledore's office determined to warn Fleur properly, not just through their emotional connection. Despite the separation order, they needed to talk face to face. Hermione provided the solution. "The room of requirement can become whatever you need," she reminded him. "Including a place ministry restrictions can't monitor." That evening, Harry paced before the blank wall on the 7th floor, thinking intently, "I need a place where Fleur and I can talk privately, where no one can find or monitor us." The door that appeared was smaller than usual, almost unnoticeable unless you knew to look for it. Inside was a simple, comfortable room with 2 chairs beside a small hearth, and most importantly, complex privacy wards shimmering visibly along the walls. Harry sent a pulse of invitation through their bond, including an image of the 7th floor corridor. Fleur's response came quickly, understanding followed by caution, then determination. She arrived 20 minutes later, slipping inside quickly. "The ministry has tracking charms on both of us," she warned immediately. "But this room, it's disrupting them somehow. It becomes exactly what you need, Harry explained. And right now, we need privacy. They sat facing each other, closer than they'd been allowed in weeks. Their bond hummed pleasantly between them, no longer restricted by artificial distance. "What's wrong?" Fleur asked, sensing his underlying worry. "Your emotions have been turbulent all day." Harry explained his dream and Dumbledore's interpretation. "Voldemort is planning something involving our bond. Something for the third task." Fleur considered this gravely. The final task has always been when champions are most vulnerable, isolated in the maze, separated from spectators and judges. Perfect opportunity for interference, Harry agreed. Especially with someone inside Hogwarts helping him. "You suspect someone specific?" Harry hesitated. "Moody's been acting strangely. Watching us during training sessions when he has no official reason to be there. Asking questions about our bond that seem too interested." "I've noticed that too," Fleur admitted. "His magical eye follows our magic, not our physical movements." They discussed possibilities late into the night, developing contingency plans for the maze. Instead of avoiding the danger, they would prepare for it, ready to confront whatever trap awaited while protecting their bond from exploitation. "We should practice combining our magic more directly," Fleur suggested. "Not just coordination through the bond, but actual spell fusion like we glimpsed during the first task." "The Ministry would never allow it," Harry pointed out. "Which is why we meet here," Fleur gestured to the room. 3 times weekly, secret practice sessions while maintaining the facade of compliance." Harry agreed readily. They established a schedule using their emotional connection to confirm safe times, with Hermione, Ron, and Gabrielle providing alibis as needed. Their clandestine practice sessions proved invaluable. In the room of requirement, free from Ministry observation, they discovered the true potential of their magical connection. They could combine spells to create entirely new effects, Fleur's charm work enhancing Harry's defensive magic, his power amplifying her precision. They developed a fighting style that utilized both their strengths, moving in perfect synchronization through their emotional awareness of each other. Most importantly, they learned to control the visible manifestation of their bond. What had previously emerged as obvious flares of light could now be contained, channeled internally so that only the effects of their combined magic were visible, not the connection itself. "Umbridge would explode if she knew what we were doing," Harry commented after a particularly successful practice. "She suspects," Fleur replied, conjuring water for them both. "That's why the restrictions keep changing, she knows we're finding ways around them. Let her suspect. We'll be ready for whatever comes." As May turned to June, the final task loomed ever closer. The separation order remained in effect, though public opinion had shifted enough that the Ministry faced criticism for its heavy-handed approach. Educational articles about Veela culture appeared regularly in the Daily Prophet, many quoting Fleur Delacour as an expert on magical being relations. "Your mother's running a brilliant campaign," Harry observed during one of their room of requirement meetings. "She's been fighting these prejudices her entire life," Fleur said proudly. This situation just gave her a more visible platform. The night before the third task, they met for one final planning session. The maze had been completed, towering hedges now filling the Quidditch pitch. Tomorrow they would face whatever challenges lay inside, both those designed by the tournament committee and whatever trap Voldemort had prepared. "We stick to the plan," Harry reviewed. "Independent entry as required, but we maintain emotional connection throughout. If either of us senses danger beyond normal tournament challenges, we converge immediately," Fleur finished. "Using our bond to locate each other. And if there's a trap, we spring it deliberately, on our terms, rather than being caught unaware." Their strategy relied on the element of surprise. Everyone, including Voldemort's agent, would expect them to follow the Ministry restrictions and compete separately. No one would anticipate their level of coordination or the strength of their combined magic. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Fleur said softly as their meeting concluded, "I want you to know that I don't regret any of this. The bond, the challenges, they brought you into my life. I feel the same, Harry admitted. For the first time, the crazy magical stuff that happens to me led to something good. They embraced briefly, their magic humming contentedly between them, before reluctantly separating to maintain the appearance of compliance with ministry rules. Neither suspected just how thoroughly their preparation would be tested the following day. The morning of the third task dawned clear and mild. Anticipation filled the great hall during breakfast, with students discussing the champion's chances and the likely challenges within the maze. Harry sat with Ron and Hermione, picking at his food while maintaining a subtle emotional connection with Fleur across the hall. Her presence in his mind had become so natural he barely noticed it anymore, a constant, reassuring awareness. "You ready, mate?" Ron asked, piling sausages onto Harry's barely touched plate. "Need your strength for the maze." "As ready as we can be," Harry replied quietly. Hermione gave him a searching look. "You're still planning to coordinate, aren't you?" Harry nodded slightly. "We can't ignore the warning signs. Something's going to happen beyond the normal task." "Just be careful," Hermione whispered. "Umbridge has convinced Fudge that any magical cooperation between you two is dangerous. There will be monitoring charms all over the maze." "We know." Harry had expected nothing less. "We've prepared for that too." The champions were given the morning off to prepare mentally. Harry spent it with Ron and Hermione by the lake, reviewing spells and strategies one final time. Through their bond, he could sense Fleur doing something similar with Gabrielle, her emotional state focused and determined. As afternoon approached, families of the champions arrived to watch the final task. The Weasleys came for Harry, Molly embracing him fiercely while Bill shook his hand with unexpected understanding in his eyes. "Charlie mentioned you and the Beauxbatons champion have a unique magical connection," Bill said quietly. "As someone who works with ancient magic daily, I think it's brilliant. Don't let the ministry bureaucrats tell you otherwise." Harry appreciated the support more than he could express. "Thanks, Bill." To his surprise, Fleur Delacour approached their group, Gabrielle at her side. "Harry Potter," she greeted warmly. "My daughter speaks highly of your preparation for today's challenge." Mrs. Weasley looked momentarily startled but recovered quickly, extending her hand. "Molly Weasley. We've heard wonderful things about your daughter as well." The two mothers sized each other up briefly before Apollon smiled. "Perhaps we should sit together during the task. I suspect we share similar concerns about the ministry's handling of our children's situation." "I've had plenty to say about that nonsense," Molly agreed, warming to Apollon immediately. "Treating them like they've done something wrong, when it's just natural magic." As the parents bonded over mutual protective instincts, Harry felt a wave of affection from across the grounds. He looked up to see Fleur watching from a distance, her smile visible even from afar. He returned the feeling, adding his amusement at their mother's instant alliance. The champions gathered at the entrance to the maze as evening approached. Ministry officials, including Umbridge, stood nearby with magical monitoring equipment similar to what they'd used at the lake. Bagman explained the rules one final time. Champions would enter according to their current point standings, with Harry first, followed by Cedric, Krum, and Fleur. "Remember," Bagman concluded cheerfully, "if you encounter difficulty, send up red sparks and our patrollers will extract you promptly." As Harry prepared to enter first, Umbridge approached with her sickly sweet smile. "A reminder, Mr. Potter, that magical cooperation between champions is strictly forbidden. Our monitoring charms will detect any unusual magical resonance." "I understand the rules, Madam Umbridge," Harry replied evenly. "Excellent." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We wouldn't want any unfortunate disqualifications after coming so far, would we?" As she walked away, Harry exchanged one last look with Fleur. No words or obvious signals passed between them, but through their bond flowed perfect understanding. Be careful. Stay connected. Trust the plan. The cannon sounded, and Harry entered the maze. Immediately, the towering hedges closed behind him, muffling the crowd's cheers. The maze was eerily silent, shadows lengthening as sunset approached. Harry cast a quiet, point-me spell to establish his bearings, then began moving steadily toward the center. The first obstacles were straightforward, a boggart that he dispatched with ridiculous, a golden mist that temporarily inverted his world until he stepped boldly through it. He maintained a steady pace, neither rushing recklessly nor delaying unnecessarily. All the while, he kept his emotional connection with Fleur open, sensing her entry into the maze and her steady progress through her own challenges. They moved on separate paths but with complete awareness of each other's general location and state of mind. About 15 minutes in, Harry encountered a sphinx blocking his path. The creature posed her riddle, which Harry solved after careful consideration, earning passage. As he continued, he sensed Fleur facing something similar, her concentration intense, then satisfaction as she too overcame the challenge. The pattern continued as they navigated deeper into the maze, independent progress but shared awareness, their emotional connection functioning perfectly despite the distance. Harry encountered a blast-ended script and barely escaped with singed robes. Fleur faced a swarm of doxies that required quick charm work to repel. Then, approximately 30 minutes into the task, Harry felt something change in their connection. Fleur's emotions shifted abruptly from focused determination to shocked surprise, then nothing, a sudden emptiness where her presence should be. Harry stopped dead in his tracks. Their bond hadn't broken, he could still sense it stretching between them, but Fleur's consciousness seemed absent. Not injured or frightened, simply gone, as if she'd been rendered unconscious instantly. This was the warning they'd been waiting for. Something beyond the normal tournament challenges had occurred. Without hesitation, Harry changed direction, using their bond like a compass pointing toward Fleur. He sent his own emotions through the connection, concern, determination, coming to help, hoping some part of her might sense it even in unconsciousness. He moved quickly but cautiously, aware that whatever had happened to Fleur might be waiting for him too. Around a corner, he nearly collided with Cedric, who looked surprised to see him. "Potter? Thought you'd be closer to the center by now. Have you seen Fleur?" Harry asked urgently. Cedric shook his head. "Not since the entrance." "Why? Something wrong?" Before Harry could answer, red sparks shot into the air some distance away. Someone had been forced to withdraw. "That might be her," Cedric said. "The patrollers will handle it." "Maybe." But Harry's instincts screamed that this wasn't a normal tournament withdrawal. "I'm going to check anyway." "Suit yourself," Cedric shrugged, continuing on his path. "Good luck." Harry resumed following his bond sense toward Fleur, moving faster now. As he approached her location, he heard voices, one gruff and familiar, the other high and cold. Unconscious but unharmed, as instructed, "My lord," came Moody's voice from around the hedge corner. "The girl's bond with Potter makes her the perfect bait." "Excellent, Barty," replied the cold voice that Harry recognized from his nightmares. "The connection between them grows stronger than anticipated. Her magic will amplify the ritual significantly." Harry froze, processing what he'd heard. Moody wasn't Moody, he was Barty Crouch Jr., the Death Eater who had escaped Azkaban. And he was communicating somehow with Voldemort, using Fleur as bait. Their suspicions had been correct, but the reality was worse than they'd imagined. The plan wasn't just to trap Harry, they intended to use both him and Fleur, their bond specifically, for whatever ritual Voldemort had planned. Harry considered his options quickly. He could send up red sparks, but that would alert Crouch/Moody immediately. He could try to rescue Fleur alone, but might be overwhelmed by the disguised Death Eater. Or he could follow their original plan, spring the trap deliberately, but on his terms. Decision made, Harry backed away silently, then deliberately made noise approaching from another direction, as if happening upon them by coincidence. "Professor Moody," he called, rounding the corner with his wand ready but not overtly threatening. The false Moody stood over Fleur's unconscious form, his magical eyes swiveling rapidly. "Potter. Good timing." Found Miss Delacour like this, must have been attacked by one of the creatures. Is she all right? Harry asked, moving closer while projecting concern but not suspicion. Stunned, I think. I was about to send up sparks, but since you're here. Moody's normal eye gleamed strangely. Perhaps you'd like to check on her yourself. Being connected as you are. Harry knelt beside Fleur, maintaining the pretense while quickly assessing her condition through their bond. She was indeed unconscious but otherwise unharmed, their connection still intact though dormant on her end. She needs medical attention, Harry said, reaching for his wand as if to send up sparks. Actually, Moody's voice changed, dropping the gruff professorly tone, I think you both need to take a little trip. Harry had been expecting the attack and rolled sideways as a stunning spell shot past him. He came up firing, Expelliarmus, followed quickly by Impedimenta. The false Moody blocked both spells but looked surprised at Harry's combat readiness. Quicker than expected, Potter. But not quick enough. What followed was a brief but intense duel. Harry had improved significantly through his training with Fleur, but Barty Crouch Jr. was a skilled Death Eater with decades more experience. Harry found himself driven back, defending desperately while trying to maintain position near Fleur. You can't win this, Potter, Crouch taunted, his features beginning to shift as Polyjuice Potion wore off. The Dark Lord has plans for you and your Veela girlfriend. She's not a Veela, she's a witch, Harry countered, deflecting another curse. And your plans don't matter, Dumbledore knows Voldemort is trying to return. Crouch laughed, a maniacal sound nothing like Moody's usual gruff chuckle. Dumbledore suspects, but he's too late. Tonight the Dark Lord rises again, with you as the guest of honor. As they fought, Harry felt something stirring in the bond. Fleur was regaining consciousness, her awareness flickering back to life. He needed to buy time. Why the maze? Harry demanded, keeping Crouch talking. Why not just grab me from Hogwarts earlier? The Triwizard Cup, Crouch explained proudly, gesturing toward a path Harry hadn't taken. Transformed into a portkey. But when we discovered your bond with the Delacour girl, the plan expanded. 2 for the price of 1, your blood and your bond magic combined. Harry feigned greater exhaustion than he felt, allowing Crouch to press his advantage. You'll never get away with taking both of us. The tournament officials will find nothing but an unfortunate accident, Crouch finished smugly. 2 champions who disappeared in the maze, tragic, but not unprecedented in Triwizard history. Through the bond, Harry sensed Fleur was now fully conscious but cleverly maintaining the appearance of unconsciousness. He sent a quick emotional message, ready on my signal, and felt her understanding in return. Harry allowed himself to be backed toward Fleur's seemingly unconscious form. You won't succeed, he declared, letting his wand arm drop slightly as if tiring. Voldemort will never return to power. Oh, but he will, Crouch moved in for the final strike. Tonight, with your unwilling assistance. The moment Crouch stepped within range, Harry gave the mental signal. In perfect synchronization, he dropped to one knee as Fleur's eyes snapped open, both casting simultaneously, Harry's Stupefy merging with Fleur's Impedimenta into a combined spell that hit Crouch squarely in the chest. The Death Eater flew backward, slamming into the hedge before collapsing unconscious, his features continuing to morph back to his true appearance. Perfect timing, Harry helped Fleur to her feet. Are you all right? Stunned from behind, she confirmed, retrieving her wand from where it had fallen. I heard enough before losing consciousness to know he planned to use us both. They quickly bound the unconscious Crouch with magical ropes, but their situation remained precarious. The cup is still a portkey, Harry pointed out. And Voldemort is expecting his servant to deliver us. Which gives us an opportunity, Fleur said, her mind working quickly. We know it's a trap, but they don't know we know. Harry caught her meaning immediately. We could turn the trap against them. Exactly. Instead of victims, we arrive prepared. It was dangerous, extraordinarily so, but potentially their best chance to disrupt Voldemort's plans completely rather than merely escaping this immediate threat. If we send up sparks now, Harry reasoned, Crouch will be captured, but Voldemort will simply find another way, another time when we're not expecting it. And he'll still be after our bond, Fleur added. Whatever ritual he's planned, it specifically requires our connected magic. They looked at each other, the same resolve forming in both minds. Through their bond flowed absolute certainty. This was their choice, their decision to face the danger together rather than postponing the inevitable. We need a plan, Harry said, kneeling beside Crouch to search his pockets. He found several potion vials and a communication device, a small mirror showing only darkness. The ritual will require control of our bond, Fleur reasoned. They'll try to channel it, direct it. So we give them what they expect, Harry suggested, until the critical moment. They quickly developed a strategy, combining what they knew of Voldemort's methods with their understanding of their own magical connection. The bond between them would be their greatest vulnerability but also their greatest weapon, if used correctly. Ready? Harry asked, once they'd prepared as thoroughly as possible in the limited time available. Fleur nodded, taking his hand. Together by choice, not by force. They left the bound Crouch behind, following the path he had indicated until they found the Triwizard Cup gleaming on a plinth in a small clearing. Its blue light pulsed invitingly. On 3, Harry said, positioning them both to grab the cup simultaneously. 1, 2, 3. They grasped the handles together, and immediately felt the familiar hook behind their navels as the portkey activated, whirling them away from Hogwarts toward whatever awaited them. They landed hard on damp ground, still clutching the cup between them. Disoriented but alert, they took in their surroundings quickly, a graveyard, dimly lit by the rising moon, ancient headstones throwing long shadows across overgrown grass. Little Hangleton, Harry whispered, recognizing the scene from his dreams. This is where he's been hiding. They released the cup and stood back to back, wands ready as they scanned for threats. The graveyard appeared deserted, but a light burned in a distant window of a hillside manor house. They're coming, Fleur murmured, sensing movement between the graves. Remember the plan. A figure emerged from the shadows, short and cloaked, carrying what looked like a bundle of robes. As it approached, Harry recognized the man from his nightmares, Wormtail, cradling the small, terrible form of Voldemort's temporary body. Ah, right on schedule, came a high, cold voice from the bundle. And not just the boy, but the Veela as well. Excellent. What do you want with us? Harry demanded, playing his role as the confused captive while surreptitiously assessing their surroundings. A large stone cauldron stood nearby, already bubbling with some potion. Beside it lay various ritual implements, including a large silver dagger. Want? I require your assistance, Harry Potter, Voldemort replied. Yours and your magically bonded companions. A donation of blood and magic for a most important ritual. Wormtail moved forward nervously. Shall I bind them, Master? Yes, but carefully. Their bond must remain active for the ritual to work properly. With a flick of his wand, Wormtail sent ropes snaking toward them both. Harry and Fleur allowed themselves to be bound to a large marble headstone, Riddle, the name read, while maintaining the appearance of struggling just enough to be convincing. I'm sorry, Harry whispered to Fleur as the ropes tightened. Through their bond flowed reassurance, this was proceeding exactly as they'd anticipated. Wormtail began preparing the ritual, adding ingredients to the bubbling cauldron while chanting in a shaking voice. Bone of the Father, unknowingly given, you will renew your son. A fine dust rose from the grave beneath their feet, floating into the cauldron, which sparked and turned blue. Flesh of the servant, willingly sacrificed, you will revive your master. Wormtail extended his right hand over the cauldron, then sliced it off with the silver dagger. His scream echoed through the graveyard as the severed hand fell into the potion, turning it a burning red. Finally, Wormtail approached Harry and Fleur, dagger dripping with his own blood. Blood of the enemies, forcibly taken, you will resurrect your foe. He cut first Harry's arm, then Fleur's, collecting their blood in a single vial which he added to the cauldron. The potion turned blindingly white. What happened next was both expected and horrifying. Wormtail lifted Voldemort's temporary body and placed it into the cauldron. For a moment, nothing happened, then the cauldron began to emit sparks, so bright they illuminated the entire graveyard. Now, Wormtail turned back to them, eyes gleaming with fanatical light despite his pain, the final ingredient, the bond magic. He raised his remaining hand, pointing his wand at the space between Harry and Fleur. Vinculum Revelio, he incanted. Their bond became visible, the silver blue and gold crimson strands connecting them manifesting physically in the air. Wormtail cast again, attempting to direct those strands toward the cauldron. Vinculum extractum. This was the moment they'd prepared for. Instead of resisting the pull on their bond, they channeled it deliberately, allowing some of the visible magic to flow toward the cauldron while simultaneously strengthening their true connection beneath the surface, hidden from detection. Yes! Wormtail cried as the visible strands of magic connected with the cauldron, which began to melt away, revealing a tall, skeletal figure rising from the swirling mist. Lord Voldemort had returned, pale and snake-like, red eyes gleaming in the darkness. He examined his new body with satisfaction before turning his attention to his captives. "Harry Potter," he said softly. "At last we meet properly. And with your Veela bond made as well, a most unexpected but welcome addition to our gathering." Death Eaters began to apparate into the graveyard, forming a circle around their master. Voldemort addressed them briefly, chastising their years of absence before turning back to Harry and Fleur. "Your bond magic has made this body stronger than I anticipated," Voldemort told them, flexing his long fingers. "A rare power indeed, one I shall continue to study once you are both properly subdued." This confirmed what they'd suspected. Voldemort didn't intend to kill them immediately. He wanted to harness their bond magic for his own purposes. "You'll never control our magic," Fleur spoke for the first time, her voice steady despite their seemingly dire situation. "The bond doesn't work that way." "No." Voldemort approached, studying her with cruel curiosity. "Perhaps a demonstration of who controls what is in order." Crucio. The torture curse struck Fleur, but in that instant, their hidden strategy activated. Through their secretly strengthened bond, Harry absorbed half the pain, while Fleur channeled the remainder into the earth beneath them. She jerked against the ropes but made barely a sound, confusing Voldemort. "Interesting resistance," he observed. "Let's try the boy instead." Crucio. The same process repeated, the pain split between them, then dispersed through their connection to the earth. Harry gritted his teeth but remained far more composed than Voldemort expected. "The bond protects them," one Death Eater observed nervously. "No matter," Voldemort waved dismissively. "Even the strongest bond can be broken with proper incentive. Perhaps watching each other suffer conventionally will be more effective." He turned to his assembled Death Eaters. "Cut them down and return their wands. I wish to demonstrate that even with their precious bond and their wands, they cannot stand against Lord Voldemort." This, too, they had anticipated. Their best chance wasn't as bound captives but as active participants, able to implement the final phase of their plan. Once freed and handed their wands, Harry and Fleur stood side by side, seemingly cornered but now precisely where they needed to be. "I'll even give you the first move, Potter," Voldemort offered magnanimously. "Let us see what Dumbledore has taught his prized student." "Dumbledore taught me many things," Harry replied. "But what I'm about to show you, we learned ourselves." With that, Harry and Fleur moved in perfect synchronization, their wands moving in complementary patterns as they cast simultaneously. Their spells, Harry's Expelliarmus and Fleur's Protego, didn't just combine but transformed, creating a defensive dome that expanded outward with explosive force. The Death Eaters nearest them were thrown backward, unprepared for such powerful combined magic. Voldemort himself staggered, caught off guard by the display. "What is this?" he hissed, regaining his footing. "Avada Kedavra." The killing curse shot toward them, but they were already moving, their bond allowing perfect coordination without verbal communication. They split apart, the curse passing between them, while simultaneously casting their next combination, a disorientation charm from Fleur paired with Harry's blasting curse, creating a vortex of destructive magic that tore through the Death Eater ranks. Chaos erupted in the graveyard. Death Eaters fired curses wildly, some hitting their own allies as Harry and Fleur continued their synchronized attack, moving like dancers through a carefully choreographed battle. Their strategy wasn't to defeat Voldemort, they knew that was impossible at this stage, but to disrupt his forces, gather evidence of his return, and secure their escape. Voldemort, realizing the threat their combined magic posed, focused his attack directly on their bond. Vinculum Disrupto. He cast, a spell designed to sever magical connections. The attack hit their bond directly, sending pain shooting through both of them. But instead of breaking, their connection adapted, the shared pain becoming shared strength as they consciously chose to maintain their bond despite the assault. Impossible, Voldemort snarled as his spell failed. No bond can withstand direct magical disruption. You don't understand what you're facing, Fleur called back, her accent thickening with emotion. Our bond isn't just magic, it's choice. They pressed their advantage, working their way strategically toward the Triwizard Cup, which still lay where they'd dropped it. Voldemort, recognizing their intent, moved to intercept them. You cannot escape, he declared, casting a barrier spell between them and the portkey. We don't need to escape yet, Harry replied, nodding to Fleur. In perfect unison, they cast again, but this time, instead of attacking Voldemort directly, their combined spell shot upward, exploding in the sky above the graveyard. The magical burst formed a perfect image, a lightning bolt intertwined with a Veela flame, visible for miles around. A magical signature that Dumbledore would recognize instantly. A signal? Voldemort laughed coldly. Do you expect rescue? No one knows where you are. We don't need rescue, Harry said. We need witnesses. On cue, several small objects they'd planted around the graveyard activated, magical recording devices similar to the ones the Ministry had used to monitor their bond, modified by Hermione to capture and transmit magical signatures. Evidence of Voldemort's return and the Death Eaters' identities, beaming to receivers they'd left with Dumbledore. Voldemort realized too late what they'd done. With a roar of rage, he sent a barrage of killing curses toward them. Destroy them. Now. Harry and Fleur made their final move, a combined summoning charm that pulled the Triwizard Cup directly to them through Voldemort's barrier. As their hands closed around the handles, they locked eyes with the Dark Lord. This isn't over, Harry declared. We'll be ready next time, Fleur added. The portkey activated, pulling them away as Voldemort's scream of rage echoed in their ears. They crashed back onto the edge of the maze, the Triwizard Cup rolling away as they landed in a heap of exhaustion and adrenaline. For a moment, there was stunned silence from the crowd, then chaos erupted as people realized something was terribly wrong. Harry and Fleur clung to each other, their bond humming with relief and lingering fear as Dumbledore reached them first, followed by McGonagall and Snape. Voldemort, Harry gasped, clutching Dumbledore's robes. He's back. Used our blood, mine and Fleur's, and tried to use our bond. The recordings, Fleur added urgently. Did they transmit? They did, Dumbledore confirmed quietly. We have the evidence. Ministry officials converged on them, Fudge blustering about tournament irregularities, while Umbridge tried to separate them, citing the still active restriction order. Step away from each other immediately, she demanded. This unauthorized magical contact violates. Oh, shut up, Dolores, McGonagall snapped with uncharacteristic bluntness. These children have just escaped you-know-who himself. Your ridiculous restrictions are the least of our concerns. Madame Maxime pushed through the crowd, followed by Apollon and Gabrielle Delacour and the Weasleys. What happened? She demanded. Where did they go? Voldemort happened, Dumbledore said loudly enough for those nearby to hear. He has returned, using Mr. Potter and Miss Delacour in a resurrection ritual. Fudge spluttered in denial. Preposterous. Dead for 13 years, can't possibly, we have evidence, Snape interrupted coldly, holding up a small crystal receiver showing magical signatures. Undeniable proof of the Dark Lord's return and his supporters' identities. As the adults argued, the medical team tried to separate Harry and Fleur for treatment. They refused, maintaining physical contact as Madame Pomfrey healed the ritual cuts on their arms. "Your bond," she murmured, noticing the visible connection between them that they were no longer bothering to hide. "It's changed." "Strengthened," Fleur confirmed. "We chose it, consciously, completely." "Even when Voldemort tried to break it," Harry added. "We chose each other over his power." Their choice had indeed transformed the bond. What had begun as an unexpected magical phenomenon had evolved through shared danger and deliberate acceptance into something deeper, a connection of magic, emotion, and mutual choice that even Voldemort couldn't sever. As the chaos continued around them, Ministry officials arguing, Dumbledore organizing immediate responses, reporters clamoring for information, Harry and Fleur remained in their own bubble of calm, drawing strength from each other through their now permanent bond. "What happens now?" Harry asked quietly. "Now we face what comes together," Fleur replied with certainty. "Not because magic decided it, but because we did." The aftermath unfolded in expected and unexpected ways. Despite the evidence, Fudge refused to officially acknowledge Voldemort's return, claiming the recordings had been tampered with, and the witnesses, confused by tournament stress. The Daily Prophet, under Ministry pressure, reported only that the tournament had ended in unexpected complications requiring investigation. But other publications, including the French magical newspaper L'Oracle and even the Quibbler, published the full account of Voldemort's resurrection. International magical communities took the threat seriously, with the French Ministry of Magic being first to acknowledge the danger and begin protective measures. At Hogwarts, the final days of term passed in a strange limbo of knowing and not knowing. Students whispered about what had really happened in the maze, while professors prepared quietly for the coming conflict. The separation order between Harry and Fleur was officially rescinded, not through Ministry enlightenment, but because maintaining it became politically untenable when international newspapers began questioning why British authorities were restricting a proven defensive magical connection just when dark forces were rising. "They didn't admit they were wrong," Hermione observed as they sat by the lake. "They just stopped enforcing it and hoped no one would notice." "Typical Ministry," Ron agreed, skipping stones across the water. "Deny everything, admit nothing." Harry and Fleur sat together, their bond now a comfortable, permanent presence. They'd spent hours with Dumbledore, sharing everything they'd witnessed and helping analyze the evidence they'd gathered. The headmaster had been impressed by their preparation and courage. "You transformed what could have been Voldemort's greatest advantage into his first defeat in this new conflict," he told them. "Your bond represents exactly what he cannot understand, the power of choice and connection over force and domination." Now, as the Beauxbatons carriage prepared for departure, they faced their most personal challenge, separation not by Ministry decree but by educational reality. Fleur would return to France to complete her final exams, while Harry faced another summer with the Dursleys before returning to Hogwarts. "The distance won't affect the bond," Fleur assured him as they walked the grounds one last time. "Not anymore. We've moved beyond physical proximity requirements." "I know," Harry said, though the prospect of separation still troubled him. "But it won't be the same." "No," she agreed. "But we'll adapt. We're quite good at that, apparently." They discussed their future extensively. At 17, Fleur would begin her career at Gringotts' French branch, transferring to London the following year, a plan she'd had even before meeting Harry, now given additional purpose. At 15, Harry still had 2 years at Hogwarts, but their long-term path seemed remarkably clear for two people who'd been thrown together by magical accident less than a year ago. "We should complete the bond formally," Fleur suggested as they reached the lake's edge. "Before I leave." The final stage of a Veela bond, as described in Apollin's books, involved a simple but significant ritual, an exchange of freely given magic that would stabilize and complete their connection permanently. "Are you sure?" Harry asked. "Once done, it can't be undone." "I've never been more certain of anything," Fleur replied. "Not because some magical artifact selected us, not because ancient magic recognized compatibility, but because I choose you, Harry Potter." That evening, as sunset painted the sky in fiery hues, they gathered at their private cove by the lake. Hermione, Ron, and Gabrielle stood as witnesses, while Apollon guided them through the ancient words. The ritual was elegant in its simplicity, a declaration of choice, an exchange of magic freely given rather than automatically shared. They stood facing each other, hands joined, as Apollon spoke the traditional words in the ancient Veela language. "Magic may recognize, but only hearts can choose," she translated for the others. "What destiny suggests, only free will can confirm." Harry and Fleur spoke their parts in unison. "I choose this bond not because magic demands it, but because I desire it. Not from obligation, but from recognition of who you are and who we become together." As they completed the ritual, their bond flared visibly one final time, not in the uncontrolled burst of their earlier interactions, but in a perfect, harmonious pattern that settled around them like a protective embrace before fading from external view, its power turning inward. The completed bond felt different, steadier, deeper, more a part of them than something between them. They could sense each other's presence, emotions, and general well-being regardless of distance, but with comfortable boundaries that respected their individual identities. "It's perfect," Fleur whispered, the connection allowing her to share her joy more directly than words ever could. "Worth every challenge," Harry agreed, returning the sentiment through their bond. The following morning, as the Beauxbatons carriage prepared for departure, they faced their temporary parting with bittersweet certainty. What had begun as a failed Veela Allure had transformed into something neither of them had imagined possible, a connection that transcended magical accident to become deliberate choice. "This isn't goodbye," Fleur reminded him as they embraced one last time before she boarded. "Just until soon." "Until soon," Harry agreed, feeling her presence in his mind, a constant reminder that whatever challenges came next, from Voldemort's return to Ministry denial to the ordinary complexities of teenage life, he would never face them truly alone again. As the magnificent carriage lifted into the sky, pulled by its enormous winged horses, Harry watched without sadness. Their bond hummed contentedly between them, undiminished by growing distance, a testament not to the power of ancient magic or destiny, but to the greater magic of choice, freely made and wholeheartedly embraced. Whatever the future held, they would face it as they had faced Voldemort in that graveyard, side by side in spirit if not always in body, connected by magic but bound by choice. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.